Chapter 1524. The battle in the void on this side lasted longer than Yun Nuoxing's side. Probably because the void on this side did not have enough worlds and champions to hold the fort. The chaos in the world of order that was caused by the resonance of the timeline only slowly subsided a few million years ago. In the void on their side, they were already fighting a fierce battle with the death mist. Fortunately, although the battle lasted for a long time, the world of order did not suffer too much damage. Judging from the number of life forms and the level of energy that they saw in the past few hours, this strange void still had a considerable amount of power. If they moved this void back, it might not just increase their power by 50%, it might even increase their power by 60% or 70%. However, that was something to be considered later. Now that they were trapped here, there was no need to talk about moving back. 1 high-tier origin, 2 high-tier origin, 3 high-tier origin, 4, 5. Looking at the life forms that were running all over the world, Yun Nuoxing silently counted the number of high-tier forces. Her mind was full of thoughts about how to arrange these people. Before the void was moved back, she was already thinking about the front line of the void. Feng Qingwang gently knocked on Yun Nuoxing's head. "Don't worry about that. We haven't been able to go back yet." Yun Nuoxing laughed dryly and looked at the huge planet in front of them. The defense of the first planet of the Prime World was quite tight. Close to the surface of the planet, there was a floating city. It was a fortress that guarded the border. It was probably made to look like a city to facilitate the passage of people. Many champions on the wall were staring at the countless life forms that were gathering from other places. Although it looked tight, it did not have a particularly solemn and tense atmosphere. It did not look like it was during the war. At this moment, it was just an ordinary pass to control the flow of people, although it was floating in the sky. The ancient city carried the aura of time and history. It should have existed for a very long time. Even the aura of breaking through to the next realm could be felt on its body. It floated here to become a pass, as if it had been specially made to make a hole. There are a lot of energy marks left in the starry sky. They are road signs left by people from other worlds to facilitate the transmission and communication between worlds. The first star of the Divine Court is more lively than the other worlds in this void area. The other worlds are the convergence of large galaxies and star clusters. Only the Divine Court uses overlapping spaces. In the depths of those spaces, there's a portal that leads to the headquarters of the Divine Court. It's like decorating the first star as a garden. It's really lively in this way. It's the center of this world group and the most lively place. It is the most lively place in the world. Ningfei pointed at the stars and explained. Soon, they stopped at the back of the line. They looked forward and saw that the line was very long. However, there were only about 2,000 or 3,000 people standing in front of each other. Their mounts, ships, and other similar tools were all quite large. The gap between the lines was very long, so the line looked very long. The weakest life forms that appeared here were at the rebirth realm. There were even some high-level heavenly gods of origin who were standing in the line calmly, with no expression on their faces. They looked as if they were reflecting on their mistakes. After the line squeezed forward for a while, Yun Nuoxing and the others saw the ship that almost hit them just now. Judging from the position they occupied and the fact that no one approached within 1,000 feet of them, they seemed to be a very strong group of people. No one was willing to provoke them. The people on the ship were pacing back and forth on the deck a little impatiently. As they walked around, they saw Yun Nuoxing and the others who were queuing at the back of the line. Someone greeted them, and the others sneered, but they didn't say anything. There were also people who pointed at them, but Yun Nuoxing couldn't be bothered to take it to heart. He just looked at the starry sky and was a little curious. There aren't many high-level heavenly gods, but the number of them gathered together is enough to move unhindered in the stars. There are also many heavenly gods. Has the aftermath of the star spirit spring not dissipated yet? Yun Nuoxing asked. Logically speaking, there are 2 things that cause the most commotion about the star spirit spring. The first is when it appears. The second is when it is obtained. Everyone is waiting for someone to announce that they have obtained the star spirit spring within 3 or 4 days after it is obtained. This is the usual practice. However, Mr. Feng does not plan to establish a sect, so there is no need to mention this fixed event, Gu Zhongming said with a faint smile. Ning Fei suddenly let out a soft cry of surprise. Everyone looked over and saw him looking at the wall in front of them. He was confused and could not help but ask, "Why has the Guardian come out?" It didn't take Gu Zhongming much effort to find a person on the city wall. It was a female commander wearing golden light armor. She stood at the top of the city gate. Her cold and beautiful eyes were vigilant as she stared at the troops below. Yin Nuoxing also noticed the female commander. She had not been on the wall earlier, but now that she had suddenly appeared, even the soldiers guarding the fortress had a sharp presence. The people standing in the group immediately felt an invisible pressure, which made everyone's expressions become unnatural. Yin Nuoxing gently exhaled and circled around the group. The pressuring presence could not even get within 3 meters of them. A guardian commander who has just reached the 9th layer of origin. It's understandable for a force of this level to appear in a fortress, but she shouldn't come out unless there's something going on. The sudden appearance of the guardian had attracted the group's attention, so the small pressure was not a hindrance. The guardian of the first star has probably not appeared for 1,000 years. The last time she appeared was because an expert accidentally entered. I wonder what the situation is this time. Jing Yuanji and the others looked at Yin Nuoxing, which made him stunned. He hurriedly waved his hand. No, this has nothing to do with me. You can sense it yourselves. I don't have any presence at all. You can't see it all, right? Let me tell you, if I really hide my presence in the void, no one will be able to sense it. Siyu poked Yin Nuoxing's face with her jade-like finger and said, "You've got some weird talents." Yin Nuoxing bared his teeth at the girl. This was a job requirement. Back then, the observer had to do things quietly, just like an assassin. How could they not hide their presence? But now they did not need these things. They would only use them when they came out for a walk. As for this period of time, they did not need to hide their presence. They would rush to the front of the abyssal death mist with the Netheruin sword and billions of formations and kill it. The Guardian had appeared for less than 5 minutes and suddenly disappeared without a trace. Yin Nuoxing saw her hiding in the void, but her attention was still focused on the space in the real world. Squeezing in the team, they soon arrived at the fortress. Standing there and looking up at the building that was filled with the aura of time, everyone could not help but exclaim. It was really magnificent and strict. The cold color tone set off the cold aura of the soldiers, adding a sense of iron and blood to the fortress. The people around had shrunk their mounts and riding equipment by several times, and the space in front of the fortress gate was suddenly much more spacious. Yin Nuoxing looked at it and simply turned the phoenix's shadow back into energy and put it away. They had just stood in the starry sky when they heard some sneers. They turned their heads and saw that the ship did not shrink like the others. It was just like another fortress in front of them. The people standing on the deck were looking around with disdain, especially at the group of them, pointing and gossiping. They seemed to have a special sense of superiority when they looked down at them from above. Yin Nuoxing was too lazy to pay attention to them. She followed the team and walked forward slowly towards the fortress gate. There was a person on the ship, and no one knew what he was thinking. The mocking look in his eyes when he looked at Yin Nuoxing and the others suddenly changed. He raised his finger, and the ship suddenly flashed with the light of energy for a moment. A dark blue energy lightning rushed towards Yin Nuoxing and the others at lightning speed. A faint sound of energy collision suddenly echoed in front of the fortress gate, startling many people. After a few seconds, they all stepped aside and looked at them with eyes that were waiting to see a good show. Yin Nuoxing did not look back. Her slender index finger was holding a mass of chaotic energy. It was the dark blue energy lightning just now. She glanced at it and casually crushed it, then said softly, "Yuanji, sink the ship." Jing Yuanji gently acknowledged and turned around. Dense spatial force rapidly condensed in her hand, and with a gentle flick of her finger, the ball of energy shot out. Only when it shot out did it completely condense into a light blue spear that was several hundred meters long. The people on the way were shocked. Many of them rolled to the side in fear, but the spatial spear shot past them all in a flash and appeared below the ship. It pierced through the ship with a flash of blue energy, and the energy imprints it left behind along the way detonated, causing over 100 energy blasts in the middle of the ship. Bang! Visually, one could only see a violent explosion of energy. The massive object was blown into two from the middle, causing countless people to be shocked. That ship can withstand an attack from a peak 8th layer origin source expert without leaving a single mark, yet it's been torn apart so easily. The people in the surroundings were stunned. They stared at Yun Nuoxing's group in fear, secretly placing them in a dangerous position. The group of people on the ship fell from the ship in a horrible shape. The person who had shot out the dark blue bolt of energy earlier revealed a vicious expression with killing intent. With a furious bellow, the presence of a powerful origin source erupted, and he was about to lunge at Yun Nuoxing's group. Stop! Suddenly, a shout came from the cold and solemn wall of the fortress, accompanied by the sonorous sound of long spears and halberds. Everyone turned their heads and saw that the ambassador had returned. He was still standing in the same position, staring at the people from a Yun Nuo star with a pair of cold eyes. He said coldly, "If you disturb the order here, you will be permanently deprived of the qualification to enter the first star of the Divine Court." Yun Nuoxing shrugged his shoulders indifferently. On the other hand, the people on the other side were so angry that they were trembling all over. However, due to the prestige of the gatekeeper and also afraid of the consequences of a big fight here, they actually swallowed their anger and stood at the side without saying a word. One of them even completely tore the ship into pieces and threw it into the void, as if to vent his anger. Look, there are quite a lot of unreasonable people in this world. Yun Nuoxing shrugged at Siyu and Feng Qingwang. The two girls were inexperienced, so she had to instill some special ideas into them. Just slap them a few times, and they'll calm down. Siyu tilted her head. What if they can't calm down? Then slap them until they calm down. Yun Nuoxing gave her a thumbs up with a smile. Master Feng, don't teach little Yu and Qingwang bad things, said Jing Yuji. Jing Yuanji couldn't help but say. Then, she pulled the two girls aside to correct their ideas. Yun Nuoxing shrugged helplessly. This was a fortress full of history and the aura of time. The heavy aura of time told everyone how heavy its existence was. Yun Nuoxing found a lot of traces. War scars on the walls, traces of fierce attacks, traces of energy bombardments. Some places had been repaired perfectly, but the scars were still there, like a mark of glory. There were also many energy imprints that contained a huge amount of energy and some things that he couldn't identify in a short time. They were similar to divine runes and runes. They were probably used to protect the fortress. He stood there and observed for a while. Then, he lifted his foot and walked forward. The others hadn't recovered from the shock of seeing Jing Yuanji sink the ship so casually. When they saw Jing Yuanji and the others walking towards them, they hurriedly made way. The female commander on the wall stared at Yun Nuoxing and the others with a meaningful look. Then, she raised her head and looked at the group of people driving the ship. Private fights are not allowed before the town closes. If there's a grudge, someone on the first star will find a place for you to settle it. If you act recklessly on the first star, you will be killed without mercy. Oh, Yun Nuoxing shrugged in response. Then, with a smile, he met the gaze of the female commander. Excuse me, can we go in now? The female commander responded with a muffled sound. Then, she turned around and disappeared from the wall. Yun Nuoxing watched her go into the void again. Then, he lifted his foot and led the others forward. The group of people driving the ship stared at Yun Nuoxing and the others. They cursed fiercely and followed behind the group. After this episode, the initial order in front of the fortress was restored. The long line of people gradually shrank. After that, there were some small disturbances, but the scene of almost fighting did not happen again. After passing by the fortress, they continued to move forward in the starry sky for a while. Yun Nuoxing and the others followed the people in front of them and walked in front of a thing that was unknown, whether it was a talisman, a magic formation, a divine pattern, or something else. After a quick teleportation, they directly landed on the first star. In front of them was a square paved with white bricks. A column inlaid with a string of diamond-shaped crystals was erected in the middle of the square. The people who had just been teleported opened their eyes in the square. When they looked up, they saw that they were already standing in the city. There were 3 rows of lush trees on both sides of the street and in the middle. The buildings were a short distance away from the trees, on the street in a straight line. There were shops and pavilions. Further away, the area of the city was divided into regions. There were large manors, large buildings similar to temples, restaurants, and other lively places. The style is very different. Other than that, there doesn't seem to be any difference, Yin Nuashing said after looking at the city for a while. The places where the human race lives are mostly the same. Other than the meaningless decorations used to decorate the buildings and decorate the city all year round in a peaceful world, everything else is about the same. Simplicity and convenience are the most important. Min's voice came faintly from the side. She looked at the unusually crowded place, and her cheeks twitched. There are so many people. It's so noisy. Yin Nuashing felt the same way. The devilish sound pierced his ears as soon as he came down, and he almost fainted before he could catch his breath. Now that he had recovered and looked in front of him, he saw a sea of people standing shoulder to shoulder. To be honest, it would not be a problem to say all these words at this moment. There were so many people that the sound of clothes rubbing against each other could be heard from all directions. It was similar to millions of giant beasts stomping and roaring. Fortunately, the teleportation square was large, and the square itself was not crowded. It was just that there were a lot of people in the city. At a glance, other than the buildings, there was only a black mass of people. There are indeed a lot of people. Halcyon, does the first star of the celestial court usually have so many people gathered in the divine city? Ningfei looked at the sea of people that looked like a surging tide. He couldn't even tell what the original sound was from the voices that came from beside his ears. Ge Zhoming dug his ears. Louder. If you have something to say it in your soul. I say, there aren't so many people usually. Do you want to die if you shout so loudly in your soul? Yin Nuashing and the others did not know whether to laugh or cry. They had only taken a few steps in the square when the teleportation lights behind them flashed continuously. Guests from the starry sky kept arriving here. The dozens of people on the ship also arrived at the square at this moment. When they saw Yin Nuashing and the others standing not far away, their eyes immediately turned cold. The person who had just hit them suddenly said coldly, "Ignorant idiots, be careful of your heads." Yin Nuashing and the others were stunned when they heard this. He held Siyu's hands and said earnestly, "Look, there will always be a lot of noisy people. I didn't slap him just now, but now he's barking in your ear, causing mental pollution to you. But other people can't hit him." Siyu blinked and responded with a cute smile. That's true." Yin Nuashing scratched his head and laughed dryly. He waved his hand and led the others forward. "Let's go and see why the first star is so lively now." That person was startled when he saw them leave so arrogantly. He clenched his fists so tightly that they were about to shatter. He angrily flicked his sleeves and snorted coldly. Then, he led his people to walk in the other direction. Yin Nuashing had been staring at them the whole time. Now that they had left, he heaved a sigh of relief. "Are you crazy? You attacked my head for no reason, and now you're acting like a victim who wants to take revenge. To be honest, no one will notice if I kill them quietly, right?" Everyone waved their hands. No. Everyone will know." Ge Zhoming smiled bitterly and said to Yin Nuashing, "Mr. Feng, let's go ahead and collect some information. It's rare for the Divine City to be so lively. Something rare is about to happen. You guys should go ahead and find a place to stay. Go. Be careful." Yin Nuashing waved his hand. There were many high-level beings in the city, but they didn't gather in one place. They were scattered all over the Divine City. For the time being, they were staying in one place and didn't make any movements. Yin Nuashing and the others found the highest restaurant in the city. It didn't take them much effort to reach the top of the restaurant. They sat down and told Ge Zhoming and Feng Qingluo where they were. Ge Zhoming then looked at the world around him. "When I saw it earlier, there was a very suitable place to make a void node in this world. It seems to be on the first star. Yun Nuashing looked around and scratched his head in confusion. Why can't we find it after we come down? There are too many shields on the first star. Are they blocking our vision? Feng Qing Wang replied. There aren't many things in the void that can shield my eyes. I don't think it's that. It should be something else. Well, I can't find it now. Looks like I'll have to circle this planet a few times. As Yun Nuashing spoke, his gaze suddenly paused. He sensed something that caused his spirit to freeze in the air. He slowly stood up and waved his hand at the air. Don't panic, just relax. Jing Yuanji and the others were stunned. They looked around and didn't see anyone else. They couldn't help but look at him. Yun Nuashing shrugged and kept his soul. We got caught again. Chapter 1525. Yun Nuashing felt that he had been a little unlucky recently. He ran into trouble when he went out to clean up, and misfortune never came alone. When he was forced to enter the sea urchin world, he was watched by Brother Ariai and the others. There were more unlucky incidents in the past. This time, when he first came here, he used his soul to feel around in the first star of the God's Court. Before he could sense anything, he was caught and looked at by a consciousness. However, he did not know whose consciousness it was. The first meeting of both parties was calm, and they were not surprised. Yun Nuashing closed his eyes and let his soul hover around him. He waited quietly for a while, but there was no visitor. Then he opened his eyes. It seemed that the other party did not intend to pursue the matter. However, the action just now was to stop his soul from spreading, and it did not come after him. I was careless. Yun Nuashing rubbed his bangs. It was rare to be discovered when one's spirit was fused into the void, unless one happened to encounter someone who was concentrating on fusing their spirit into a corner of the void to sense the void, but even so, he was rarely caught. The other party might also have such a method, which was why he encountered him. In the future, it would be better for me to infuse the power of order into my divine soul to disguise myself a second time. It wouldn't be fun for me to sneak a peek while walking around. After all, this place was someone else's territory. Although nothing happened during this coincidental encounter in the void, it didn't mean that nothing would happen the next time. After he ended his soul's wander into the void, Ning Fei and Ge Zhoming walked into the private room with some snacks. Hey, we're here. We brought some snacks. It's a specialty here. Yun Nuashing immediately thought of Hui. That guy was the same. If he went to the new world with him, he would also gather information while searching for local snacks and specialties before returning. Moreover, his speed was very fast. Training field, Ge Zhoming brought the information that made the first star of the God's Court lively. However, the information made Yun Nuashing a little surprised. Training field, it sounded like a place where some juniors would go for cultivation and exploration. It should have nothing to do with us, right? Talking about the training field was like talking about a secret realm. His first reaction was that it was some kind of cultivation place or some kind of treasure trove. However, judging from Ge Zhoming's expression, it did not seem to be the case. Ge Zhoming put the snacks and specialties he bought on the table and said, Haha, it's not what you think, Mr. Feng. Although it's called the training field, it's a very special place. It's an ancient war relic, located in both the void and the real world. That space is engraved with many mysterious rules and powers of order. Some people speculate that it's the traces of battle left behind by some people who reached the peak of origin several years ago, or even reached the primeval realm. There may be more than 6 heavenly gods of origin who died there. Yun Nuashing was a little startled. It was possible that they were at the peak of origin, but it was unlikely that they were at the primeval realm. The first to reach the primeval realm in the Dark Age was Chang Kong, and the second was Hui. This was the answer Hui gave him. It was said that after reaching the primeval realm, one soul could sense the undying energy left behind by those who reached the primeval realm. He looked through the entire space of order and only found Chang Kong's energy. Even though he had died a long time ago, the energy had only become very dim. It would not disappear completely with the passage of time. Perhaps those marks would only truly disappear when the great samsara came. It's filled with the engravings of many laws and order left behind by those who were at the peak of origin or the primeval realm. There were a lot of things to explain. Yin Nuashing was too lazy to talk about it, so he did not mention it. He went along with Ge Zhongming's words and said, "If that's the case, it's a place worth visiting. It's a very good place for the Empyrean gods of origin who have been stagnant for countless years and can't find their way forward. Although there are pros and cons to observing the traces of the laws and order left behind by those who are at the peak of origin or the primeval realm, the benefits always outweigh the disadvantages. As long as you control it well, there won't be any problems." Jing Yuanji said, "If we want to go to that ancient war site, do we have to go through the first star of the celestial court?" Ning Fei nodded slightly. "There are a few families that have access to that war site. Those who go through the first star of the celestial court are probably from this world group. You've been there? What's it like? Is it fun?" Siyu hopped on Yun Nuashing's back and wrapped her arms around his neck. She asked Ge Zhongming and the others with a smile. "Oh, we've been there." Ge Zhongming's expression was a little strange. Yin Nuashing could tell from his awkward expression that he probably didn't have much experience the last time he went there. He said, "It's indeed a good place. There are many traces of the laws and order engraved there, and they don't show any signs of dissipating after so many years. However, because so many people go there, it's easy to gather there. Well, it's like that." Ning Fei did not feel embarrassed. He pointed at Ge Zhongming and said, the last time he went there, he obtained a law fragment carrier and was chased halfway across the Milky Way by someone. He sighed and pointed at himself. "Unfortunately, I was one of the people who chased him." Ge Zhongming laughed dryly. "In the end, the two of us fought and killed the other people, Yin Nuashing and the others. So these two bad friends had such a past. They really didn't expect this. However, that was when we were at the peak of the heavenly god stage. When we went there, there weren't that many people in this star field. At that time, the war site was still floating in an independent space between the void and the real world. There were no teleportation portals set up in the void to facilitate travel. At that time, there was only a large group of people squatting outside the war site and waiting for it to open. Then, they would swarm in like a swarm of bees. I didn't expect to hear the news that the war site is about to open. If there's a chance, we can go there again. Maybe we can break through the bottleneck of the laws." Seeing that the two bad friends were reminiscing and sighing, Yin Nuashing rested her chin on one hand and blinked her black eyes. "Why, you want to go there?" The two of them laughed dryly and nodded. They had no intention of hiding it. At the same time, they looked at Yin Nuashing with anticipation, as if they were trying to encourage her. Yin Nuashing laughed helplessly. "How much time do we have left? I mean, how much longer until the war site opens?" "Only 2 days. Is Mr. Feng interested?" Ge Zhongming said calmly with a smile. Seeing that he stopped holding the things in his hand and looked at Yin Nuashing, it was clear that he was actually looking forward to it. "I'm not interested. Those laws are useless to me. They should be useless." Yin Nuashing stretched lazily. Seeing their slightly regretful and disappointed expressions, he chuckled and reached out to pat Siyu's head, who was resting her head on his shoulder. "However, these girls do need to take a look around. So, let's take advantage of these 2 days to set up the void node in this area. Then, we'll head to the war site." Ning Fei and Ge Zhongming's grins took up half of their faces. Ge Zhongming cupped his hands at Siyu and said with a smile, "Then, we'll be basking in the glory of the fairies." Ning Fei thought for a moment and reminded them. "In the past, when the war site opens, various places will publicly impart the experience of entering the war site and exchange information. However, entering the site requires a small entrance fee." "That's right, this restaurant happens to have one. It's in the middle level. They should be talking about it now. Mr. Feng, are we going to find a location of the void node now? If time isn't urgent, why don't we go there and listen?" Yin Nuashing tilted her head in confusion. "The war site, although I don't know how often it opens, from what you said, it should have been open for quite some time. Why do we need an entrance fee for that information?" "First, it's because the time span is not small. There are new people every time. Second, the war site is very large. After so many years, it hasn't been fully explored. Some people speculate that the war may have broken the space into billions of pieces. Every time it opens, only a few pieces of space will appear. It's the size of those pieces added together that is larger than a world. Some people say that it's actually a world that was destroyed in the war. The world barrier melted and collided with each other, forming the huge war site. Ge Zhoming waved his hand and said, "In short, there are many theories. Until now, there hasn't been a unified answer. I heard that even though the war site has been opened for hundreds of thousands of times, there are only a few duplicated spaces. Even if there are duplicated spaces, only a relatively small portion of them are duplicated. The other spaces have never been explored. With each opening, other than seeing more of the ruins, it seems that we are gradually going deeper into the heart of the war. From the edge, we will encounter something special every time. Exchanging information and obtaining information will allow the newcomers to determine what form this special will take. However, it is also possible that they will not be able to determine it even if they have exchanged information. Generally speaking, it is beneficial to listen to what the people who have been there last time have to say. If you don't go, you won't necessarily miss out on anything. Obtaining information is secondary. You have to have a good eye for things." Yin Nuoxing listened more seriously. If that was really the case, then the scale of the battle back then was not small at all. At the very least, it should not be any smaller than the last time they fought with vast sky. That time, one side was attacking while the other side was defending. The reason why the battle was not fully carried out with the divine realm as the stage was because it was a battle that revolved around a stronghold. If tens of thousands of heavenly origin gods were gathered into two sides and fought without any restrictions, then the scale of the battle would be staggering. Yin Nuoxing felt that he had enough time to wait. This time, he quietly released his divine soul again, fusing it with the power of order and precepts. Together with the power of origin energy and the power of the little angel, he would not be able to capture that person even if he appeared in front of him again. This time, the investigation was much smoother. There were some whose divine souls had fused with the void, but they did not run into him. He quickly scouted the first star for a while, focusing on the overlapping dimensions. Void nodes were things that could affect the void from the void to the real world, and vice versa. To put it bluntly, nodes had to be set up in both the real world and the void at the same time to strengthen the connection between the two dimensions. Otherwise, his large-scale actions in the void could easily cause some cracks to appear between the void and the real world. It was inconspicuous, but it was not a good thing. Marking in the void was easy. As long as he found the right location, it did not matter if it was shallow, deep, or on the surface. However, if he were to look for nodes in the real world, he would easily run into other people's forbidden areas. This was especially true for places where large amounts of void energy, the power of precepts, and the power of origin energy were gathered due to the terrain. Those places were very suitable to be used as void nodes, and it was also very suitable for people to set up nests. He might even break into other people's homes. However, Yin Nuoxing was not worried. No one in this part of the void knew them. Even if they were in trouble, they could run away with a slap on the wrist. There was no need to think about finding them. Yin Nuoxing's divine soul circled around the first star for a while, but he still could not find a suitable location. He could not help but sigh. He had clearly seen it before he came in. Did he have to go out now and then come in again? There were a lot of shelters and barriers in this place. It would be a little troublesome to sneak in. It was better to look for it first. After circling around for about 10 minutes and marking several possible suitable locations, Yin Nuoxing's divine soul circled around the first star for a while longer. Then he found the divine soul that he had just exchanged glances with. He hesitated for a while and did not go over to take a look. His divine soul retreated like a tide. "How is it? Have you found the location of the void node?" Ge Zhoming asked enthusiastically. Yin Nuoxing let out a long breath and shook his head. "I've marked 7 or 8 locations, but I'm not sure which one is the real location of the void node. I'll throw the coordinates to you first. You should be familiar with this place. Then, let's go down and listen to the class." Ning Fei and Gu Zhongming put away the coordinates and locations. Then they walked in front with smiles on their faces. Yin Nuoxing and the others also walked out of the private room and followed the two of them. After circling around the huge restaurant for a while, they found the location of the class that the two of them mentioned in the middle. Gu Zhongming communicated with the two guards at the door for a while, then turned around to count the number of people. He handed over a stone with specks of starlight. The two guards looked at it and then pushed the door open. Behind the door was a huge space that looked like a venue. From the outside, one would not be able to tell that it was so big. When they entered, Yin Nuoxing and Jing Yuanji could clearly feel the signs of space distortion. It seemed that the space here had been expanded several times. The inside was very spacious and could accommodate tens of thousands of people at once. There were many seats in the venue, and there were independent spaces similar to private rooms above that were very widely distributed. At this moment, there were many people sitting in the venue. When they saw the door open, they turned their eyes and glanced at Yin Nuoxing and the others for a while before turning their eyes away. However, there were also many people who were secretly glancing back and forth. In addition to wanting to see through their identities, they also seemed to be appreciating their group. Yin Nuoxing's cheeks twitched. She snapped her fingers that were hanging in her sleeves, and a layer of transparent energy barrier suddenly enveloped their group. Those prying eyes could not even get close to them. Many people whispered in surprise, as if they were very surprised by this method. Gu Zhongming and Ning Fei found a relatively remote place and sat together like chairs. They waved their hands and threw down an energy barrier to isolate the sound. Only then did they let Yin Nuoxing and the others sit down. The defensive measures are not enough, Yin Nuoxing said. Then, under the astonished gaze of the two, she threw down an energy barrier on the ground. The two of them jumped up and down. We still need a little more. Seeing this, Jing Yuanji added another space series energy rune. Gu Zhongming and Ning Fei almost vomited blood when they saw this. Not enough. Min glanced at them and continued to add more defensive measures. Barriers and energy runes were fiercely smashed into the barrier and the void one after another. Gu Zhongming and Ning Fei both vomited blood. This level of defense, they only wanted to prevent prying eyes. Well, these big shots directly threw out a ton of energy barriers. Even if the world they were in suddenly came to an end and the first star suddenly collapsed, they would not be affected in the slightest. After Yin Nuoxing and the others were done, they sat on the spacious chairs with peace of mind and lazily curled up their bodies. At this moment, there were about 3,000 to 4,000 people gathered in the venue. Compared to the number of people that the venue could hold, it was not a lot. However, when they thought about how many similar venues there were in this city and on this planet, they felt that 3,000 to 4,000 people was actually not a small number. Yin Nuoxing noticed that most of them were life forms between the peak of the Heavenly God stage and the high level of the Origin stage. Peak of the Origin stage was rarely seen. There were only 2 of them. Looking at the state of their auras and some other details, Yin Nuoxing could determine that at least 40% of the people had reached a bottleneck. The other 60% was not easy to determine. Maybe they did, maybe they did not. However, the 40% was enough to prove that this place was indeed more beneficial for people who had reached a bottleneck. After paying attention to the people who entered the venue, Yin Nuoxing looked at the layout of the venue. It was an ordinary, spacious venue. However, there were some decorations that looked like clouds and stars floating in the sky. There was real starlight shining through the space and sprinkling in this venue. It was like a palace under the sea of stars. As she looked, she felt that something was wrong. She did not look away for long and saw the group of people who had a little conflict with the ship in the private room above that seemed to be an independent space. As soon as their eyes met, the group of people sneered and pointed at each other, making vulgar gestures. How annoying. Wherever I go, I can't help but meet this group of unlucky people. Gu Zhongming frowned. It's probably because I'm unlucky. That's right. I've been a little unlucky recently. Wherever I go, I get into trouble. Sigh. After all, the will of the greater void has locked onto me. I can't hide from it. At first, Yin Nuoxing just sighed, but as she spoke, her whole body turned gray. Jing Yuanji and the others did not know whether to laugh or cry. They felt a little sorry for her. As a normal person, she was determined to be the biggest problem by the will of the greater void. Wherever she went, she would cause trouble. She was surrounded by a halo of bad luck. Hearing them gesturing as if they were saying something, Yin Nuoxing planned to remove the soundproof barrier. He used his gaze to ask for everyone's opinion. Everyone expressed that they were very interested in what they were saying, so he put away the barrier. Then, some voices were heard. Hee, we can't do anything to you if you hide well. Since you want to go to the ruins, don't blame us for not showing mercy. We'll enter the ruins tomorrow and take your lives. Look, they're looking over. She removed the soundproof barrier. Ha! They definitely won't dare to enter the ruins now. The number of people who stay there each time is not a small number. Let them find a better grave. Sigh, that's too kind. Min frowned and said coldly, stinky fish and shrimps. Jing Yuanji glanced at Lord Feng and saw that he had sat up straight and wanted to say something, so she shrank back. Her pretty face showed an interested expression. Yin Nuoxing rested her chin on her right hand and looked at the group of people mockingly. All right. I heard that you're tired of living. Why don't you listen to me? Unfortunately, we're also going to the ruins. You'd better hide far away with your tails between your legs, or it's best if you don't go in. Otherwise, I'll kill you in 3 days. Chapter 1526. After saying this, Yin Nuoxing clearly saw that the group of people's expressions had turned much colder. Seeing that they were about to continue speaking, he opened the soundproof barrier again. No matter how they opened their mouths and shouted, he could not hear a single word. The commotion caused by the two groups of people quieted down the venue quite a bit. Before the official start of the event, everyone was very happy to see such a drama being played out here. Many people started to pay attention to them. Gazes came from all directions. Seeing the group of people in the private room shouting unilaterally, some people couldn't help but sneer in their hearts and shake their heads in disdain. Siyu and Feng Qing Wang seemed to have thought of something. They looked at each other and grabbed Yin Nuoxing's hand for both sides. While he was still in a daze, they suddenly lifted up his 2 middle fingers and gave him the sincerest greeting. Everyone was stunned. Yin Nuoxing was also stunned. The group of people yelling in the private room looked so cold that they asked the people in the other private rooms to turn on the energy barrier and step back. They expected a fierce battle to break out here. When the atmosphere was at its most tense and was about to explode, the door suddenly opened again, breaking the tense atmosphere. Everyone turned their attention to the door. A figure appeared in front of the door. That person was wearing a light blue armor engraved with energy runes. He was tall and had an inexplicable aura. Many people felt pressured just by entering the room. They all turned their heads. Why is this guy here again? Judging from his aura, it seems that he is about to break through to the next level again. Is he going to advance to the top level this time? I still remember clearly the scene of this guy moving away a mountain full of nomological imprints. There were a few times when I didn't see him come back. I thought he wouldn't go to those ruins again. I heard that someone predicted that there would be some unusual changes in the ruins. I heard that it attracted many people who had been here before. They all want to go in and check it out. What do you mean by unusual changes? You will know in a while. When Yin Nuoxing had time to teach the 2 girls a lesson, he turned on the barrier when he saw the commotion. He also took the time to look at the newcomer. He saw through the newcomer situation at a glance. The newcomer was close to the peak of the 9th heaven of origin. Although he was about to break through, judging from his aura and the fluctuation of rules, he seemed to have used some method to forcefully break through the seal. Instead of rushing to break through to the next level, he should stabilize the slightly shaky rules and power of rules. Otherwise, this rock would definitely pop out and hit him in the future. Rules are abnormal and chaotic. He used some unusual method to forcefully break through the seal. Min glanced at the person and narrowed his black eyes. Reckless, impatient, undesirable. It's not worth mentioning. Yin Nuoxing and the others could not help but laugh dryly. This person was outspoken, but he was right. They had been on this path for so many years. Even if they were in a hurry, they were not in a hurry. In this short period of time, they were close to the peak of the ninth heaven of origin. Looking at how calm the space was, they should not encounter any situation where they were in a hurry to break through the seal. They could only speculate that he was in a hurry because he had been close to the peak for many years and had not made any progress. It was inevitable that he would be anxious. However, no matter how anxious he could only wait for the seal to break and find some correct method to break the seal without any repercussions. He had basically set up a lot of traps for himself. The group of people who had just quarreled with him suddenly stood up excitedly. The few people in the lead smiled as they greeted the man in the blue light armor. Their malevolent and sinister faces were replaced with a trace of respect. Like a myriad of stars surrounding the moon, they welcomed the man to their private room and sat down. If I remember correctly, that person went missing in another region of space for several tens of thousands of years. Ning Zhongfei rubbed his chin and looked at the curious gazes of Zhao Jiuge. When he saw Ge Zhongming and Yin Nuoxing looking at him with curiosity, he could not help but let out a dry laugh. What I heard might not be accurate. It was when Zhongming was in seclusion. I went out for a walk out of boredom and came to another region of space that belonged to the Soul Fairy Academy. That person called himself Dragonbone. He only had a code name and no name. It was said that he came from a barren world. It seemed that for some reason, that world had broken free from the guidance of the powerful laws of this region of space. As a result, everything withered and there was only a sliver of life left. He came out of that hellish place. The principal of the Soul Fairy Academy personally invited him several times when he went to that region of space, but he was not interested and refused. That's about it. There were many things that happened in between that could be ignored. Then, Ning Fei thought for a moment. It's about him going missing. I heard about it when I went to the Soul Fairy Academy. I heard that he fell into a collapsed space of order and then disappeared. At that time, I heard that the collapsed storm seemed to have some kind of unheard of energy mixed in. Even those at the pinnacle of origin wouldn't be able to last half a second. Most people thought that he was dead for sure. Who would have thought that he would appear here alive after several tens of thousands of years? Yin Nuoxing's eyes flashed, and he nodded casually. Out of curiosity, he glanced at the person with the codename Dragon Bones. He did not expect that the person with the codename Dragon Bones also looked over under the direction of the group of people beside him. The two people's eyes met instantly. A moment later, Dragon Bones made a soft sound of surprise and was the first to look away. That person seems a bit interesting. Dragon Bone gently rubbed his eyes when no one was paying attention. He turned to the person beside him. Do you have a grudge with them? It's not a big deal. The man in blue, who was the leader, grinned. If you think they are interesting, Dragon Bone, let's forget about it. Spare their lives if you meet them in the future. Dragon Bones nodded casually. He tapped the chair with his hand and frowned slightly. Recalling that pair of deep, dark eyes just now, he rubbed his eyes again. He felt that there was something wrong with that person, but he couldn't tell what it was. He didn't have any aura. He didn't have any aura. He didn't even have any aura. Yin Nuoxing just glanced at Dragonbone and then looked away. She was not interested. It was good that she had come so far. Judging from some clues, Dragonbone might have been a special Empyrean god of origin. He was more powerful than the ordinary Empyrean gods of origin. For example, he was more powerful than the ordinary Empyrean gods of origin. For example, he was more powerful than the ordinary Empyrean gods of origin. For example, he was more powerful than the ordinary Empyrean gods of origin. However, the chaotic structural rules in his body were enough to obliterate his specialness. Although his power was still at that level, he had already retired from that level before he solved his own problem. A layer of tranquil energy suddenly swept through the venue, attracting everyone's attention. The venue, which had been noisy just a moment ago, instantly quieted down. Everyone turned their gazes and saw a figure suddenly appear at the front of the venue. It was a white-haired youth filled with lethargy. At the very least, his age was a lie. Who knew just how old this person was? Even though the heavenly origin gods rarely transformed themselves into energy life forms, they could still transform their bodies. For example, they could transform themselves into little brother or something like that. Speaking of which, this lethargic young man was a bit awkward to look at. This guy was at least 2 epochs old. He was so old that his vision was blurry, and he couldn't even hide the aura of time around him anymore. Yet, he still looked like a young man. This was a bit strange. Oh, a real top Empyrean god of origin. Yin Nuoxing sat up a little straighter. He played with a tuft of hair that Siyu and Feng Qing Wang had dropped on him. There are faint traces left on his body after he failed to break through to the primeval stage. Some marks of law. How many times? Min said concisely. His eyes flashed as if he was thinking about how to break through to the primeval stage. Let me see, 2 times. And the way he left the marks of law is different. That means he used 2 methods to break through to the primeval stage. Feng Qing Wang grabbed his hair and tied her hair with his. She was stunned when she heard this. Are we going to find this old kid? Jing Yuanji also understood what Feng Qing Wang meant. He used 2 methods to break through to the primeval stage. That meant that the old man had 2 ways to break through to the primeval stage. At least theoretically, he had 2 ways if they could get it. Why? Yin Nuoxing tilted his head and looked at them. Jing Yuanji and the others were stunned. With Master Feng's mind, it was impossible that he did not understand the relationship. But he still responded like this. Was he really confused? Or, although she knew that Master Feng would know, she was still worried. She gritted her teeth and whispered, Master Feng, you said that he tried to break through to the primeval stage twice. He has a way to break through to the primeval stage. You can, I know, but it's useless. Yin Nuoxing shook his head and said, the method that the old man used is 2 of the 20 impossible methods that Hui and I have discussed. What use do I have for them? Jing Yuanji and the others were speechless. Well, they thought too much. If Yin Nuoxing really thought it was useful, he would be more excited than anyone else. Yin Nuoxing could not help but laugh bitterly when he saw the girls' dejected expressions. I say, you girls are so cute when you care about me. It's just that you're a little impatient. There are about 27 ways to break through to the primeval stage in the world. But, yes, I'm going to say but. However, after the last void turbulence, many changes have occurred in the world. The fall of the gods of origin has seriously damaged the changes in the void. Those theoretically feasible methods that theoretically exist, methods that should be fine, and many skills have all been rendered useless because of the 2 heavy blows. And I spent a lot of effort to come up with those 27 ways. In the end, we only confirmed that 2 of them are feasible even now. Yin Nuoxing said and raised his finger. 1. Divinity Carrier. This still requires the use of the laws of the realm of the gods. 2. Having reached my level, the peak of the primeval stage. Since I've reached this level, I only need to destroy everything about me. Perhaps there's a small chance. The girls quieted down. Their faces were filled with fear. Even Min Do, who had been an iceberg for thousands of years, had a frightening expression on his face. Break and rebuild? Siyu swallowed and asked with a trembling voice. This is not as simple as pushing yourself to the brink of death and rebuilding. Yin Nuoxing raised his left leg and placed it on his right leg. He supported his face with his hand. This is destroying everything about yourself. Your nails, hair, skin, blood, imprints, bones, organs, your soul, spirit, consciousness, and thoughts. You have to destroy everything and slowly disintegrate the time imprints that have accompanied you for hundreds of millions of years and several eras. You have to destroy your own laws, karma, and order until everything is destroyed and crushed. In the end, nothing is left. Yin Nuoxing took a deep breath. Seeing that the girls were hugging each other in fear, Min Do moved a chair further away from him. Then he said softly, if you can enter the cycle of reincarnation again, next time, throw away all your restraints and do it again. Then, there will be no obstacles in the primeval stage. The arrival of the perished one is quite special. If you throw away all the restraints, you should be able to vaguely see or encounter something. However, after going through reincarnation, no one can tell where you will go. In the lower realm, you'll be reincarnated once, twice, or even worse, dozens of reincarnations or even longer. If you can't even come back from the 8 realms of elements, what's the use of activating the perished one? Yin Nuashing scratched his head and waved his hand to signal them to calm down. This is a more desperate method than cutting off all means of retreat. However, it is not suitable for us. After all, I can't gamble because there are many things that I care about. Moreover, this is a method that Hui and I have deduced together. It only has a 70% success rate. Compared to the divinity carrier, it is too dangerous. Well, these things can be discussed later. Now let's focus on the class. Don't miss the important business. Yin Nuashing waved his hand and laughed. It took a while for the girls to calm down. They looked at each other and felt a little nervous. They were a little worried, but when they saw that Yin Nuashing had turned his attention, they no longer paid attention to this problem. They turned their eyes to the front of the venue. The little brother had been talking for a while. The power of laws has changed. It is much more than last time. Although it is a war site at reciprocity, we have mostly come into contact with 4th or 5th heavenly layer cultivators. There are very few that are close to advanced heavenly layer cultivators. However, each time it opens, there will be a little more than last time. We believe that this is a trend. In the end, we might be able to see the marks of laws left behind by people at reciprocity or even peak reciprocity. Those who are interested in exploring the war site together can come find us after the event. The little brother coughed gently. The entire hall fell silent. They were all sorting out the information that Yin Nuashing and the others had not heard. The little brother waited for a while. When some people returned to their senses, he continued, "Then there is the war site this time. Just like in the past, everyone has used their own methods to explore the place in advance. This time, we have basically gained nothing. We have not obtained much information that is worth paying attention to. However, according to some of the laws, we have determined that there seems to be a problem with the war site this time. This problem has caused it to open the door to the outside world ahead of time. It is also extremely unstable. The chaotic power of laws that emanates from it are in waves, just like choking on something. Some people have speculated that there is something stuck in the depths of the war site. This idea has been confirmed by several people at the same time. The probability is very high. As for what can affect this ancient war site, we are not sure. Yin Nuashing blinked her eyes. It seems that the place will become unstable when it is close to the time of its opening. There are also such fluctuations in the laws. I am afraid that it is the laws of that space itself. I'm not too sure. However, there are only a few possibilities. The rest will be clear when we go there. The war site will open in advance one more day. By then, people from other void regions will enter together. I hope that this time, our region will be able to obtain the greatest benefits." The white-haired young man finished speaking with a smile. He cupped his hands at the people present and took a few steps back. He looked at the hall and said, "If you are interested in joining forces, remember to look for our people." Everyone was speechless. This guy did not forget to advertise at the end. Not many people stayed in the venue. After listening to the report, they stood up one after another and walked towards the door that was already open. The people in the private rooms were still talking in low voices, as if they were planning something. "That's it." Siyu tilted her head and said to Yin Nuashing in a daze, "It's just listening to information. It doesn't take much effort. You see, when I was teaching you, I was also giving you a lot of information. A pot of tea, a book, and a void node for half a day. However, the amount of information I gave you was much more than what they gave you. If you want to break down the amount of information, there's actually not much difference in time." Siyu and Feng Qingwang stuck out their little tongues. They recalled the days when they listened to his lectures. It had been so many years. Looking at the hall that was almost empty, Yin Nuashing stood up and said, "Let's go. There is still more than a day before the opening. We have to deal with the void node on this planet first. After that, we can move on to other things." When they reached the entrance of the hall, the people in the private rooms happened to come down together. Yin Nuashing and the others saw dragon bones and the others walking to the entrance. They glanced at them and planned to walk past them. The man in blue laughed and was about to do something when Dragon Bones reached out and stopped him. Dragon Bones shook his head and transmitted his voice. There are too many people now. In just a short time, Yin Nuashing and the others had already walked in front of Dragon Bones and the others. Then, they collectively ignored Dragon Bones and the others and walked past them quickly. The extinguished flames in their stomachs inexplicably surged again. However, Dragon Bones kept stopping them. They also knew that even if they wanted to do something, they still had a chance. They were still on the first planet of the Celestial Court. If they really acted rashly, they would not be able to bear the consequences. After leaving the restaurant, Yin Nuashing identified the direction of the mark she left before and directly went there. After leaving the city, as the concept and rules switched, she came to an overlapping space. Although it was called an overlapping space, it was actually no different from a normal space. This was a normal space, but it was just a space with some other scenes. It was not as incredible as one would think. These overlapping spaces are quite fun after you get familiar with them. Yin Nuashing told Siyu and the rest about these dimensions when they were looking for the way. Evolved dimensions can live without obstacles, and can even evolve life itself. However, there are some dimensions that are not fully developed that tend to be chaotic and impossible to live in. There's another set of rules that work on these dimensions. These dimensions themselves are not fixed in one place. They drift around the first star, but this movement does not happen gradually. When the two dimensions drift to a certain distance away from each other, the connecting point between the two dimensions will disappear in an instant. Sometimes, you will find that the mountains in the distance will suddenly disappear and be replaced by a cliff or the end of the dimension. However, this disease is not harmful. They're just drifting normally. Unless they fall into some strange terrain, they will not encounter any problems if they stand at the intersection point of the dimensions and drift along with the dimension. Moreover, no matter how far we enter the overlapping dimension, we will always see some obvious and special marks on the first star when we look back. Siyu and Fengqing Wang turned around and saw some magnificent mountains and rivers on the first planet. However, when they moved forward, there were still mountains and rivers in the distance. Swoosh! The mountains and rivers in front of them suddenly flashed. It was as if their vision blurred and then became clear again. In front of them was a glacier covered in snow all year round. The two girls were stunned. Look, this is the switching of the overlapping spaces. It seems that the arrangement of spaces here is quite dense. There are no spatial rifts. Oh, there's a mark in front of us. Yin Nuashing looked ahead. The frozen land, snow, and thick, icy clouds. Icy storms blew all year round. It looked a little cold. Before he lifted his foot to leave, his expression suddenly changed. He scratched his head and said, "Air, how do we get caught again? And this time in the real world. I forgot to activate the void and order concealment. It seems that I let my guard down when I saw the normal order here." Yin Nuashing let out a long sigh. They were caught trespassing again. They should prepare an excuse first. They should say that they sneaked in secretly. Chapter 1527. In the world wrapped in silver, there was an ice storm sweeping through. Frozen clouds fell on the frozen continent for thousands of years. The breeze blew with snowflakes, and there was a faint sense of weight. Breathing in the fresh and cold air, and then slowly exhaling, it turned into frost. In the distance, the icebergs were covered by thick, icy clouds, showing their gloomy and dim sides. When the gust of wind blew past, the footprints left on the snowfield were washed into pure white. In the places that were not covered by icy clouds, one could see short and continuous ice mountains and floating islands exposed from the icy clouds. The bottoms of those islands were all snow white and were only thousands of meters in size. Occasionally, some islands would have traces of living beings, some of which were human beings, and some of which belonged to other living beings. Siyu ran on the snowfield excitedly, knocking hard on the trees covered with icicles and snowflakes. The snow and icicles fell all over the trees, almost turning her into a little snowman. Yin Nuoxing stepped forward helplessly, pulled out the little girl who had half of her body buried in the snow and ice, and patted the snow on her head. However, when he was not paying attention, Siyu covered his face with snow and ice, which stunned him. The little girl in his hand, just now, had already continued to run in the distance with a smile. When he patted the snow off his face, he saw the little girl making a face at him. He could not help but smile bitterly. This playful girl did not look like she had lived for 100 million years, but he himself did not look like he had lived for dozens of eras. The ice and snow in the frozen land will never melt. Guzhoming spat out a mouthful of white frost. He pointed to the row of short, snowy mountains in front of them and said, "You can't go past that snowy mountain. From that point on, it's the forbidden land of the divine court. No one is allowed to enter without permission." Is that the end of it? Yin Nuoxing patted the snow off his body and looked into the distance for a while. His palm touched his ear subconsciously. He had just been discovered by a consciousness, and it seemed to be the consciousness that had discovered him in front of him. At this moment, it was entangled with his own consciousness, but it was not hostile. In fact, he could easily get rid of it. It was more like little purple soul tugging at his clothes and following him. The consciousness was deliberately showing him the way. After Ge Zhongming said that he could not go past the snowy mountain, the consciousness showed him a way. There was a cave in the snowy mountain. He could sneak to the back of the mountain from the cave without touching the barrier set up on the snowy mountain. Yes, the consciousness told him that there was a barrier behind the snowy mountain. Once a strange aura appeared behind the barrier, it would be surrounded by layers of firepower in an instant. Then, the cave could bypass the barrier's detection. Yin Nuoxing felt that if the person who set up the barrier was not stupid, then there was something wrong with the cave. God knew how such a strange loophole appeared. Then there was a little problem now. He did not know what the consciousness was guiding him to do, but curiosity drove him there. Well, maybe he was a little playful in his bones. He was supposed to sneak in and secretly set up an energy node, but it turned out to be an exploration of the mysterious land. But what if the consciousness led him to the depths and then set off the alarm to surround him? As if it sensed what he was thinking, the consciousness suddenly released a weak goodwill to show that it was harmless. This made Yin Nuoxing even more curious. The emotions conveyed by the consciousness could not be concealed or hinted at. Even the slightest bit of hostility could not be concealed. Yin Nuoxing let out a long sigh. Looking at the white frost floating in front of him, he felt that it was quite interesting. He raised his head and looked into the distance. Even if he was surrounded, he could still use Peerless to rush out. But since the consciousness had released its goodwill, anyway, he was not in a hurry, so he might as well go and take a look. He really did not believe that curiosity would kill him in this small broken orb. Even if he was a troublemaker, he would not be able to trigger this kind of plot. The distance looked very far, but it was actually not very far. In less than 15 minutes, Yin Nuoxing and the others climbed up the hill that was more than 300 meters high. From the top of the hill, they looked at the towering ice peak in front of them. Then, they looked at the direction they came from. On the flat ice field, there was a sparse patch of ice trees. The frozen branches and leaves made the whole tree look like ice swords. Dim sunlight occasionally shone through the gaps of the ice clouds and sprinkled on the ice forest, adding a trace of cold light. It was like a sword tomb with millions of famous swords. It looked quite spectacular. It's quite cold. Suddenly, Yuan Kong in the spiritual world spoke in a low voice, successfully attracting the attention of everyone in the spiritual world. But the little girl seemed to have said it unintentionally. Just as they pricked up their ears, they heard the little girl said softly in a low voice, "Cold, wind, snow, the pain of freezing below the freezing point, and sleepiness." I remember when I first tried to transform, I fell into a world of ice and snow. I cannot even maintain my form. Accompanied by wind and snow, I rolled all the way down the snowy mountain and fell into the glacier. Haha, I was born from the void, but because of my consciousness and form, I could not even resist the cold. The people from Yun Nuo planet remained silent and did not speak. He let out a long sigh. He had never had such a feeling before. However, he seemed to subconsciously know that it was probably the imprint of life history that he had brought back from the lower realm for more than 70 years. Now that he thought about it seriously, he could actually think of that feeling. To some ordinary people who had never seen snow, snow was very pure. To ordinary people, it was a very beautiful scenery. However, to people who live in ice and snow all year round and lived a tight life, snowy days were either torture or disaster. Or, actually, it was just plain and indifferent. The little angel went over and hugged Yuan Kong. She had also experienced that stage and knew that they were not as strong as they were now. They were even weaker than ordinary people. Wanting to comfort the little girl, Yin Nuoxing also wanted to say something. But before he could say anything, he saw the little girl's face instantly turned red with a hint of asterisk asterisk. His cheeks twitched. He had forgotten that this little girl who had grown up to look like a young girl was a big sister. She did not need to be comforted. Just let her sister hug this little girl, and she would instantly be full of blood. Waving his hand and ignoring the matter in the spiritual world, Yin Nuoxing huffed and puffed. He reached out and grabbed the wisp of white frost that dissipated. The consciousness in his consciousness was repeatedly telling him that he could not go any further than 100 meters ahead. If he went any further, he would definitely be discovered. It was desperately telling him to back off. "You're very anxious," Yin Nuoxing said with a smile through his consciousness. He felt that it stiffened for a moment. So he said, "Don't worry, this barrier is nothing to me. But since you're so nervous, I'll just take another route." Yin Nuoxing stood there and watched for a while. When Siyu was about to run away, he turned around and walked in the direction they came from. Come. Let's go this way." This sudden speech that sounded like an old horse that knew the way stunned everyone. However, they did not think much about it and hurriedly followed. After walking around the mountainside of this snowy mountain range for a while, Yin Nuoxing found a cave. It was a cave that was about 10 feet tall. There was no wind, and there was still snow 5 meters inside the cave. It looked like a snowman would suddenly jump out to scare people. Why is there a cave here?" Ning Fei was stunned. They had been here before. The scenery here was good, so they could walk around, but they had never seen a cave here. "I just saw it." Yin Nuoxing pointed at his head, and everyone suddenly understood. From the moment they set foot on the snowy plains, this guy had been using his divine sense to scan around. He probably saw something. But why did he want to go into the cave? Before everyone could figure out, Yin Nuoxing had already gone into the cave, and the group quickly followed. The cave was slightly dry. There was no wind, and there was no water. There was a pool of water in the middle of the road ahead that looked like it was frozen. Siyu jumped on it twice, but did not break the ice. Yin Nuoxing knocked on Siyu's head and pulled her to prevent her from running away. Then, he put on a divine barrier for everyone to prevent anyone from looking around and discovering them. His eyes scanned the cave. There's a weak energy reaction in this cave. It seems to be an energy used to block detection. Ge Zhoming clenched his fist and touched a ball of energy. It gathers automatically. If you pass through the cave, you'll be stained with this energy that blocks detection. Jing Yuanji used the power of space to backtrack, and Mei Mao flashed slightly. There are traces of someone visiting here, but it's been a long time, maybe tens of thousands of years. The last traces left here are all from tens of thousands of years ago. Master Phone, this cave itself also has the effect of blocking detection, so it might not have been discovered before. Yin Nuoxing nodded and walked forward a lot faster. This passage covered under the thick mountain and snow was not particularly long, and they reached the end in a short while. Standing in the cave and looking at the other end of the cave, the ice and snow stopped neatly at the entrance of the cave and did not spread into the cave. There was no wind outside, and no snow fluttered, but there was a thick layer of snow on the ground. Found it. Before stepping out of the cave, Yin Nuoxing softly exclaimed, "I found the location of the void node." Ning Fei looked outside and could not help but facepalm. We really ran into someone's house. Looking at the level of defense of this place, it's probably the back of someone's house, backyard, or some other place. But I do feel the signs of order and energy gathering. Layers of barriers were opened, and wrapped in the thick barrier, the group walked out without worry, and could not help but exclaim when they got out of the cave. Hidden behind the snow mountain, under the layers of barriers, was a simple but magnificent castle, dyed white by the snow, so pure that it looked like a whole snow sculpture, and there was not a single window. For these guys who wander around the world, they had seen countless castles. Who knew how many different types they had seen? However, this kind of completely sealed castle without a single window, they had never seen such a model before. It didn't look like a castle at all. It looked more like a prison. The entrance of the cave was not a dense-sized forest, and the falling snow and stones covered the cave completely. If not for the energy of cognitive obstruction, this place would have been discovered long ago. The entrance of the cave was at the back of the castle, and they could see the castle from a 45-degree angle. It was divided into two parts, one in front and one in the back. The front part, which was the front part, was sitting firmly on the ground, but the back part was suspended in the air and looked like it was carrying a huge shell. After looking at the castle for a while, Yin Nuoxing turned and looked to the side. Also at the back of the castle, on the other side, Yin Nuoxing found the place where he left the mark. After a few glances, he confirmed that the place was suitable to be used as a void node. Just as he was about to go there, the consciousness that had been silent for a while suddenly pulled him back. Not safe. Yin Nuoxing was stunned. No? Then we can't go in? Huh, it's just a barrier. Oh, if we break it, the alarm will go off, right? The momentary conversation made Yin Nuoxing's expression change into that of not knowing whether to laugh or cry. It was really difficult to communicate with a consciousness that could only express its own meaning and could not speak. Basically, it was saying that it was guessing. After guessing for a long time, it barely reached a consensus. Well, it seems that we can't go there directly for a while. Yin Nuoxing spread his hands. There's a special barrier in that place. If we break it directly, even if we use the Netherworld Ruins sword to cut it temporarily, it will expose our position in an instant. Min nodded. His right hand was already covered in purple and black surging energy. Do you want to fight? Yin Nuoxing. For now, there's no need to fight. But we have to take a detour to get the key first. Key? Everyone was stunned. When Min heard that there was no need to fight, he retracted the void energy into his body and asked directly, "Where?" "Here, in here." Yin Nuoxing pointed at the huge shell behind the castle and said, "Actually, someone guided me all the way here. I was a little curious, but seeing that it was harmless, I didn't tell you. Let's go and see who that guy is." Following the final guidance of the consciousness, Yin Nuoxing and the others came to the highest point of the shell. When they found the right place to break the wall and enter, Siyu's thoughts drifted off somewhere. He suddenly opened his mouth and said, "I suddenly thought of the princess who was imprisoned on the top of the castle by the big bad guy." Yin Nuoxing, who was about to make a big hole in the wall, froze when he heard this. Siyu suddenly locked his eyes on him and said with a smile, "The lonely princess was imprisoned in the castle for many years until one day the prince came out." Ouch! Physics stopped Siyu's thoughts from running wild. Yin Nuoxing's cheeks twitched violently, and his brain also twitched violently. He said to the consciousness in his consciousness, "You're not a girl, are you?" There was no response. However, he could feel that the mood of the consciousness had become a little strange. Yin Nuoxing didn't really care about anything. It didn't matter if the consciousness was a man or a woman. He just hit it first. Buzz! A big purple-black hole suddenly appeared in front of him. Yin Nuoxing's body froze. He saw Min nodding and said, "Okay, let's go." Yin Nuoxing walked into the castle stiffly. Jing Yuanji and the others followed closely behind. As soon as they popped their heads out, they saw Yin Nuoxing standing in front of them. He raised his head and said, "Oh, this is really unexpected." Everyone was stunned when they saw the scene in front of them. However, it was okay. They just felt a little strange. Feng Qinghuang's body froze, and she couldn't help but tremble slightly. In front of them was a huge prison. The huge iron gate was branded with powerful rules of energy. The huge burst of energy prevented everyone from getting close to the iron gate. As there were no windows and the walls were thick, the prison was quite dark. The light from the crystals hanging on the wall couldn't fill up the space. Subconsciously, they imagined that it was a space filled with the smell of rust. "Girl, you go back first." Yin Nuoxing stepped in front of Feng Qingwang. He pressed his hands on her head and put her into the soul space without any explanation. He told the little angel and the others to take good care of her and then continued to walk inside. In the dark prison, the huge iron gate separated the space into dozens of cells. However, these cells were all empty. There were no residents in them. The air was still very fresh. Although there were rules of energy attached to the iron gate and the walls of the prison, those rules only prevented people from getting close. They didn't stop the extension of consciousness and divine soul. This was probably why the person inside could find him. No, it should be using its consciousness and divine soul to stare blankly at the sky. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so lucky to bump into him. "Min, you guys stay here and help me keep watch. Get ready to run. See you stay here too. UNG, come with me," Yin Nuoxing said softly to the few of them. Although they had made sufficient preparations, they still had to be a little cautious. In case they really fell into some kind of trap, they had to try their best to avoid being completely wiped out. The deeper they went, the brighter the space became. Some ice appeared around them. It spread out from the walls and the ground and froze the iron gate. It was obviously a sealed space, but Yin Nuoxing and Feng Qingwang felt as if a gust of cold wind was blowing in their faces. They stretched out their hands to feel carefully, but they couldn't feel anything at all. "Lord Feng, there's a weak rule of energy in the ice. It's the same type as mine," Jing Yuanji whispered. Divine power, and divine power combined with ice," Yin Nuoxing muttered. As he walked, he reached out to touch the ice. He could feel the extreme coldness coming from his fingers. It was a temperature that could freeze everything. Attached with the power of divine power, it could freeze a life form that hadn't reached the heavenly god realm. It doesn't seem to be naturally formed. It's probably some kind of defensive measure. Ice-type energy that has been combined with divine power, and divine power. The consciousness was no longer moving. It only left a guide to guide them to the deepest part. It seemed to be ready to welcome them. The ice inside was getting thicker and thicker, and the power of divine power it contained was increasing. Yin Nuoxing and Jing Yuanji felt as if they were walking in an ice palace. The ice was full of flowing energy, flashing by like little elves in the ice. Gradually, there were even some small ice cubes in the air. They had to turn sideways to avoid touching the frozen air. The iron cages had become ice cages. They were also empty inside with only ice cubes. The feeling was not much different from walking under a glacier. There were towering ice walls on both sides, and the frozen corridor under their feet went all the way down. They didn't know where it ended. Just when Yin Nuoxing couldn't help but want to break the ice cubes with a punch to change the scenery, the front suddenly came to an end. It was a completely frozen door. The door was made of ice, and there were obvious signs that someone had built it. However, that was a sign that someone had built it from the inside. The ice on the side facing them was still a block of ice. Through the transparent ice, they could vaguely see a figure inside. It was a little blurry, but they could roughly confirm that it was a woman. Yin Nuoxing facepalmed. Well, that girl was right. Bah! After exchanging a glance with Jing Yuanji and nodding, Yin Nuoxing took a deep breath, lifted his foot, and kicked down. Without any movement, he kicked a big hole in the ice without any sound. The two rushed into the ice palace side by side, and then they were stunned. This was a house made purely of ice. The tables, chairs, cabinets, bookshelves, and other furniture were all integrated with the ice on the ground. It was obvious that the person had spent a lot of effort to build such a house made of ice. However, when Yin Nuoxing saw the chair for the first time, she couldn't help but think, it should be stuck to the chair, right? If there was no accident, the person who had built all this was probably the figure sitting on the ice bed. She slowly turned her body sideways. Her beautiful face had an expression as calm as stagnant water. Her dark blue eyes were dull, and her long bluish-white hair was like the overlapping waves of the sea and glaciers. She was wearing a strange, translucent, bluish-white gauze dress, and her beautiful figure could be vaguely seen. Fine energy fragments floated around her body like a little angel. Pieces of snowflakes and ice crystals appeared half a foot around her, emitting a faint glow. Dandruff, Yin Nuashing slapped her face to force her thoughts to stop. She couldn't help but smile bitterly. But this was really too similar. Chapter 1528. On one side of the ice palace, their eyes met. She sat in the dim light of the ice and snow. Her body was glowing with the light of ice and snow. She was surrounded by fine snowflakes and ice crystals. Those ice crystals appeared randomly, circled around her body, fell, and disappeared randomly. She was like an ice fairy. She slowly turned around and faced Yin Nuashing and the others. She saw that he had a distressed expression and tilted her head in confusion. Yin Nuashing took a deep breath and adjusted his expression to look at the girl, or child sitting on the ice bed. She looked about the same age as Siyu. At first glance, she looked like an ice fairy born from ice and snow. She looked very beautiful and cold with the dancing snowflakes. However, her face was not as cold and stiff as the Lord of the Divine Court. She could even make a puzzled expression. Every single one of her features could be picked out and carefully examined. She should be like this, but her eyes were a pair of dull eyes. She could not capture the trajectory of the light. Moreover, it seemed to be caused by some kind of injury. It was not that she was born blind. After observing her for a while, Yin Nuashing walked to the ice bed and slowly bent down to the same level as her. She was also an Empyrean god of origin, but she always gave people the feeling that she was a child who had not grown up. Perhaps it was because he had taken care of many children. He could feel that there was a slightly young and immature consciousness hidden in this mature body and soul. "Why did you call me here?" Yin Nuashing asked softly while keeping a suitable distance from her. She raised her head slightly and opened her mouth. He could clearly see that she was opening her mouth to say something, but she could not make a sound. She could not make a sound either from her soul or her consciousness. Yin Nuashing finally understood why she could only express her thoughts through some emotions, even though their consciousness was connected. She pointed at a wall. Yin Nuashing looked in that direction for a long time, but did not see anything. Just as he was feeling troubled, Jing Yuanji suddenly said, "You want us to take you away?" The fairy-like girl nodded lightly. Yin Nuashing was even more distressed upon hearing this. At this moment, the girls in his soul had already begun to talk about it, and they all agreed that he would definitely, absolutely, 100% kidnap the girl back home. God had pity on him, and he really did not have such a casual thought. He was not a human trafficker, and CU and the others had already grumbled about it countless times. Furthermore, he was not the one who wanted to bring the girl back home. Wasn't this a coincidence? Furthermore, he did not kidnap many people. Taking a closer look, there were already 5 girls living in the spiritual world. TSK. He suddenly felt that he had nothing to refute. At this moment, Yin Nuashing suddenly felt the icy girl's gaze on him. She opened her mouth slightly, and a tremor came from his consciousness, causing Yin Nuashing's eyes to flicker. "You can open that place. In exchange, you want me to take you out." After a strenuous exchange, Yin Nuashing suddenly felt a headache. At this moment, his mind was spinning. Which was simpler and more straightforward, to just go on a killing spree, or to just take the little beauty away? When Jing Yuanji saw Yin Nuashing's anxious and dumbfounded look, her eyes flickered slightly. She gently pulled his hand and said, "Master Feng, if you want to place the little pillar of creation, it should be in a rather stable environment. That's the case before it's completely settled down. Once the void node is formed, it won't be affected. It's not easy to find a safe place to set up a shelter in the middle of a storm. No matter what, we have to wait for the wind to stop, or at least the wind to be a little weaker, right?" Yin Nuashing answered subconsciously. However, he was stunned after saying this. This was equivalent to him saying the answer out loud. It was like a slap to his own face. However, he still did not give up and continued to look for other ways, such as sealing off the area or something. However, just as he had this thought, his consciousness told him that it was not feasible. What could he do? He could not find a way. If he tried, he would attract attention from all directions. Even though their infiltration was rather smooth, in reality, in front of the castle, in the surrounding void, and on the floating islands in the sky, there were many powerful beings guarding them. They were all mid-tier and high-tier origins, and there were even two at the peak of origins. It was unknown if they had really broken into someone's forbidden area. What do you want to take you out for? After repeated guesses, the answer gradually became clear. In short, they just wanted to go out. They did not say where they were going. It seemed that as long as they left this place, it would be enough. Jing Yuanji's gaze swept over the two of them. She could feel the flow of consciousness between the two of them. They were probably communicating with each other in some other way. After a while, she tugged at the hesitant Yin Nuoxing and said, "Lord Feng, we shouldn't stay here for too long. It's just one person anyway. If you feel embarrassed, I'll help you bring them along." Yin Nuoxing looked at her with a face full of myocardial infarction. "It's not that I'm embarrassed. It's just that my maids at home are going to bombard me again. They're going to say that I'm kidnapping a girl, and I'm going to open that something else." Jing Yuanji saw Lord Feng's bitter expression and did not know whether to laugh or cry. After thinking about it, she felt that it would be better to keep quiet about this matter, so she really shut her mouth. Buzz buzz. A faint flicker of consciousness told Yin Nuoxing that someone would be coming at this time. There was a hint of reminder in her voice. She herself did not seem to be in a hurry. Yin Nuoxing rolled her eyes for a few seconds. Then she suddenly let out a long breath. She nodded as if she had accepted her fate and put one hand on her waist. "All right, I won't argue with you anymore. I'll bring you out. But let's make an agreement. You can't cause trouble, and you can't run around. If there's a situation, you have to tell us immediately. We also have things to do. If you want to do something, you have to wait for us to finish our things first. Well, unless it's something urgent. If you agree, I'll bring you out." The young girl's eyes gently blinked. After a moment, she pulled up a faint smile and nodded lightly. After agreeing, she quickly turned over and got off the bed. From the layer of ice under the bed, she took out an ice sculpture. That ice sculpture still contained her breath. After she placed the ice sculpture on the bed, she obediently stood beside Yin Nuoxing. She was so skilled that Yin Nuoxing and Jing Yuanji were stunned. Seeing her sitting pitifully on the bed, they thought that this girl couldn't see, speak, or even move. Now it seemed that she had done that set of actions just now so smoothly. That's right, the obstructing breath in the cave also seemed to be from this young girl. She probably didn't run out of the cave with her bare hands. Yin Nuoxing glanced at the ice elf with a strange look. She was stunned. She suddenly thought of something and put her hand into her collar. She took out a long ice chain and handed it to Yin Nuoxing. The other end of the ice chain was tied to her neck. "Wow, Yin Nuoxing was stunned. She quickly waved her hand and was about to break the ice chain when she suddenly felt that the ice chain was attached to an energy with a weak consciousness that did not belong to the girl. If she broke it casually, the people on the other side would probably sense it immediately. The secret infiltration would probably turn into a battle between the first star of the divine court and the guests from another world. The point was that if he took the ice chain, the spiritual world would explode. At this moment, the girls who were watching the fun were already whispering, No, this is too conspicuous. You don't need this. I'll help you untie it when we get out. UNG, help her put away. We're going out." Yin Nuoxing shook her head vigorously. After Jing Yuanji helped her put the ice chain back in her clothes, Yin Nuoxing bent down and carried her on his back. Her naked body was as light as a snowflake. When Yin Nuoxing carried her, he was stunned. He instinctively felt that the person he was carrying was a little abnormal. His expression went from a tsunami to an earthquake to a volcanic eruption in an instant, and then to a calm expression in an instant. The sixth one. "My luck has been completely used up." Lord Feng, what did you say?" Jing Yuanji did not hear the muttering clearly and could not help but ask. "Nothing. Let's go." Yin Nuashing shook his head. He carried the girl on his back and waited for her to grab his shoulder firmly before he said goodbye to Jing Yuanji and hurriedly ran out of the ice prison. Min, Qing Yu, and the others who were waiting at the edge of the prison with the door open were not very surprised to see Yin Nuashing and Yin Nuashing come back with another person. What they said previously indicated that there was a person inside, but this carrying a girl with long, bluish-white hair that was almost dragging on the ground while being carried was something they never expected. Let's go, let's go. Let's hurry up and leave. Someone is about to come. Yin Nuashing shook his head and led the way out of the void hole. After everyone had filed out, he hurriedly rushed to the designated place. Feng Ling, her aura is not right. She doesn't seem like a living person. Min's voice echoed softly in his ears. Yin Nuashing raised his head slightly and blocked the soul seeds of others. He replied, "Yes, but there's no problem. She is indeed a person, a life. Let's ignore her for the time being and settle the void node. We'll talk about this when we have time. I can suppress her if anything happens." Min nodded when he heard this and did not say anything else. On the other side of the snow-white fortress, there was a 10-meter-wide pass between two snow-capped mountains. A looming, huge energy rune floated out of the space. It seemed to be some kind of seal. Dozens of energy threads extended from the energy rune and connected to the snow-capped mountains on both sides, blocking the pass like a gate. The girl reached out her hand and wrote something on Yin Nuashing's shoulder. He slowly said what she wrote word by word. "This is the resting place of the dead warriors of the Divine Court. The bloodline seal of the dead warriors. The resting place. Other ways to break it will be broken." Everyone let out a long sigh. So it was this kind of seal. No wonder they had to deal with it carefully. They had hundreds of ways to get rid of this seal, which was not particularly powerful. But if they wanted to get rid of it without disturbing the seal, how could they do it when the seal was not paying attention? After knowing what kind of seal it was, Yin Nuashing had a way to break it. It was not particularly difficult to break it without disturbing the seal or the person who set it up. It was just a little troublesome. It would take dozens of barriers to block it. Seeing that the ice and snow girl seemed to have a way, he did not have to waste too much effort. The young girl lightly jumped down from Yin Nuashing's back. Her jade-like hand drew a line on her fingertip and pulled out a small wound. A drop of blood with specks of white in it shot out from her fingertip and landed on the seal. A red dot suddenly appeared, and from that red dot, the seal began to slowly fade away like snow melting away. Yin Nuashing and the others all looked at the girl again. It seemed that she had some status in the Divine Court. No, she was even a member of the main bloodline. But this doesn't seem to make sense. She has the bloodline of someone in the Divine Court? Yin Nuashing frowned, his heart filled with suspicion. How could she have such a thing as a bloodline? But before he could think clearly, she had already brought a gust of cold wind to his side. Her soft little hand naturally rested on his shoulder, as if she had already gotten used to it in an instant. It was useless to think about it now. Yin Nuashing nodded and cast a barrier here out of worry. Then he rushed into the land of rest with his people. When one first heard of the term resting place, one would probably see a scene like this. In the middle of a snowy mountain, there was a divine mausoleum covered in white snow. There were hundreds of thousands of monuments engraved with achievements lined up one after another. They had been frozen for countless years, and even though they had already passed away, they still had an immortal aura. Anyone who came here would instantly fall silent. But in fact, Yin Nuashing and the others only saw a big pit. It was a pit of ice and snow with a radius of thousands of miles. From the edge to the center, the ice clouds and snow in the sky seemed to be gathering here from all directions with this big pit as the center. The atmosphere was a little depressing. There was also a faint tranquility gathering here, which seemed to match the saying of the land of rest. Walking to the edge of the ice pit, Yin Nuashing put the girl down and handed her Qingyu. Then the whole family and the soul all jumped out at this moment. They were so fast that Siyu ran so fast that one of her shoes flew off. She looked like she was fleeing for her life. Although every time I set up the small pillar of creation, my soul will forget it. Yin Nuoshing rolled his eyes at the girls and didn't finish his sentence. Cu and the others were chatting with the ice girl and didn't have time to pay attention to him. Yin Nuoshing jumped into the middle of the ice pit. He reached out and touched his back a few times. The energy in his body condensed, and soon a huge black pillar appeared out of thin air. The huge pillar was an illusion. Even when it swept past the edge of the ice pit, it didn't feel like it had touched anything. Even when it swept past Ning Fei, Min, and the others, they didn't feel anything. Gu Zhongming touched his own body. Did that thing just pass through my body? Yuan Kong nodded. Calm down, calm down. We have already been scared once. The second time will be fine. Although it was indeed very scary to see such a huge pillar sweep past us. Ning Fei's face twitched. That wasn't just scary. He almost jumped out. Boom! With a dull sound, Yin Nuoshing pressed the small pillar of creation into the bottom of the ice pit, and the hidden space opened up, imprinting the space within a radius of 1,000 miles into the hidden space. The group of people behind only felt that their bodies had passed through a layer of something, and then in an instant, the feeling of tranquility and solemnity disappeared. They raised their heads again, and in front of them was still the ice field, but there were no icebergs or clouds in sight. There was only a pillar that was more than 10,000 miles tall standing in front of them, and there were dozens of extremely complicated types of energy gradually circulating inside it. He circled the small pillar of creation twice to check its condition. He checked the situation of this space and void. When he found that there were no problems, he gave everyone a thumbs up. No problem. We can move on to the next one. Next one? Is there more on this star? Qingyu asked softly. There shouldn't be any, but... He looked at the pillar and shrugged helplessly. When I finished it, I found that this void node can't be set up with just one small pillar of creation. The reason is that there are void, order, energy, rules, and other reasons. In short, we need to set up 2 more locations. Well, it has already chosen its own location. I know the location. We just need to go over and set it up. I expected this. Overlapping space created by the rules of the void. Just one fulcrum is not enough. We need at least 3. Yin Nuoshing let out a long sigh of relief. He returned to the group and looked around. After confirming that there were no problems, he bent down and carried the girl on his back. When Cu and the other girls finished talking, he put them away. Then, he ran back to where he came from. Gu Zhongming followed closely behind with his hands behind his head. He turned around and looked at the huge pillar. He couldn't help but say, Ning Fei, that thing is really spectacular. Speaking of which, we spent so much effort to come in, but it was done in an instant. You don't understand. Ning Fei shook his head. Of course, I don't understand either. This is the work of the big boss. We just need to watch from the side. When necessary, we will be on the lookout. Then, we will cheer like a cheerleader. Gu Zhongming thought so too. At this time, in the ice prison of the castle, an old man with white hair and a gray robe led a group of people into the ice prison. A group of people who looked like guards behind him walked forward. They raised wooden sticks with glowing crystals tied to them to illuminate the dark ice prison. They stood on both sides, silently and motionlessly. The old man walked quickly into the depths of the ice prison. Before he reached the place where the ice appeared, he suddenly stopped. His deep eyes narrowed slightly. He suddenly lowered his head and picked up a piece of ice that was only the size of a fingernail from the ground. His old eyes suddenly widened slightly. He ran into the depths of the ice prison and shouted, "Everyone, be alert! Seal the ice prison!" The soldiers raised their torches. Their sharp eyes swept across the area. The next second, the torches in their hands trembled and turned into glowing spears. A series of seals appeared from the place where they came from, sealing the space layer by layer. The old man rushed to the deepest part of the ice palace. He felt that the breath was still there. Only then did he breathe a sigh of relief. But then he felt that something was wrong. He knocked on the ice door a few times and asked tentatively, "Shuang shuang?" After waiting for a few minutes, the old man did not get a response. He frowned and gently pushed the ice door open. In a room of ice and snow, There was an ice sculpture on the bed. It was exactly the same as her appearance. His old face twitched slightly. The captain of the guards quickly ran behind him and knelt on one knee. He reported, "Sixth ancestor, the ice prison has been completely sealed. Should we, He saw the old man waving his hand and suddenly turned around. The captain of the guards also took the time to look into the room. At a glance, he knew that the lady had run out again. Suddenly, his face twitched. He did not know how many times she had sneaked out from this place. But every time, no one knew. Every time, she could still sneak out. Originally, he thought that this time, he could trap her for a while longer. Your subordinate has been negligent. Don't be negligent. The old man sighed. Hurry up and bring people to find her before she goes too far. If she leaves for too long, her form will collapse. By then, it will be useless to say anything. Chapter 1529. On a vast snowfield, it was rare for the wind and snow to stop. A group of people walked unhurriedly on the snowfield, leaving only Yun Nuoshing's footprints. After walking for about 10,000 steps, Yun Nuoshing suddenly waved his hand and stopped. The obvious footprints did not disappear because he stopped. Instead, the footprints suddenly changed direction and went to the other side of the snow mountain. It was as if there was an invisible person who continued to walk in front of them. After flashing for some distance in the snowfield, Yun Nuoshing looked at the girl on his back and said, "Okay, the footprints have been arranged. But can this kind of thing really be used to confuse others?" The snow-white girl nodded and struggled to communicate with Yun Nuoshing. Then he repeated, "Because it's difficult to move, so we left a trail of footprints." "Oh, I understand. This way, we won't be suspected." She nodded and continued to write and draw on Yun Nuoshing's shoulder. "It's almost time. Someone will come." After communicating for a while, Yun Nuoshing roughly understood the situation. The girl had a strong power in her body, but her body was not as agile as it looked. When they first met, her set of movements to escape was the most difficult movement she could do. Every time she ran out of the snowfield, she had to walk step by step. However, the best result was that she was caught after staying in the snowfield for the longest time. Most of the time, she got lost in the snowfield, fell into snow pits, and fell into glaciers. Without exception, she could only stay in the same place and wait for rescue. She could not remember how many times she had run out of the snowfield. Yun Nuoshing and the others smiled bitterly. They did not know whether to say that the girl was a little willful or that she was very persevering. Although perseverance seemed to be used in some strange places, it was understandable that a girl who had been imprisoned for years stubbornly wanted to run out. Just like Ewer, who was trapped for more than 10 years and was released, she looked like she had gone crazy. God knows how long this girl had been trapped for. As for the reason why she was locked there, Yun Nuoshing did not ask. She did not seem to want to talk about it either. Just like that, they tacitly suppressed the topic in the cradle. At this time, her little hand continued to draw on Yun Nuoshing's shoulder. "I want to see the outside world." Yun Nuoshing let out a long sigh of relief. All right. I'll take you to see the outside world. After all, we've agreed that you'll open the door for us, and I'll take you out to play until you want to come back when you're tired." An ear-piercing alarm suddenly resounded across the snowy plains. The shrill sound, accompanied by energy vibrations, reverberated through the entire snowy plains. Amidst this ear-piercing sound, beams of energy shot straight up into the sky. A large amount of aura appeared in the snowy plains, shrouding the entire sky under this layer of energy. Then, like a wave, it swept in all directions. One figure after another was awakened by the alarm and immediately soared into the sky. "We've been discovered." Yun Nuoshing nodded leisurely when she sensed the words the girl had written on her back. "I know even without you telling me. Hold on tight, we're running." The two peak reciprocity figures did not plan on moving. It was impossible for them to be discovered with just the energy fluctuations. However, even if the two of them came together, they would not be able to discover them. Yun Nuoshing glanced at the people who had shot into the sky before turning around and teleporting away with everyone. "What? She's gone?" The white-haired sixth forefather was a little confused when he heard the captain's report. Glaciers, ice caverns, snowy valleys. You've searched all of those places? The captain smiled bitterly and nodded. We found her tracks, but they suddenly disappeared halfway. Looking at the direction she went, she should have gone to the land of snowfall. However, we've searched that place and asked people, but we couldn't find any trace of Miss Schwang. Just in case, we even searched a few important places. We even used energy fluctuations to check the entire snowy plains, but the vast snowy plains, the sixth forefather frowned as he listened. His hand grabbed his beard and was stunned for a long time. His face was full of doubt. She has run out so many times, but she has never left the snowy plains. Her body should not be able to mobilize energy to support her escape. Just in case, take some people to other spaces to search. The captain cupped his hands and was about to leave when the sixth forefather suddenly thought of something and said, "By the way, the ruins are about to open. There will be many outsiders. Don't make a big move to avoid other people's guesses and suspicions. If Shuang really accidentally activated her power and ran out, it will be troublesome if other people see her true nature." Understood. The sixth ancestor frowned as he watched the guard captain leave. He was silent for a long time before he heaved a long sigh. Once the ice leaves the snowfield, I'm afraid it will melt faster. But the first star is so big, and there are so many outsiders at this time. I'm afraid he can't find the girl in time with his strength alone. Looks like it's time to let those annoying fellows do some exercise. The sixth forefather sighed and stepped out of the castle with his hands behind his back. His soul called out to some people. Second brother, third brother, fourth brother, Shuang is lost. She has left the snowy plains. Pay attention to your area. If there is nothing else, please help to look for her. At this moment, in a desert covered in yellow sand, Yin Nuoxing and the others had a round object in their hands or beside them that seemed to be woven from a formation. It was releasing light, guiding them forward in this desert. In the Gobi Desert ahead, there was a group of people riding strange beasts that seemed to be a mix of camels and horses. They moved forward at a moderate pace. There were rows of sparse short plants on the yellow sand. The green had already been washed away by the wind and sand. After crossing the short mountain in front of them, spots of white appeared on the ground ahead. It made Yin Nuoxing suddenly think of the wilderness of Heaven Wasteland. Phew! How is it? Is there any response from the energy sensing? Yin Nuoxing's breath turned into frost. His body was covered with a layer of faint blue light. The air around him was so cold that even the scorching sun in the sky could not dispel the cold air he released. Such a cold situation was obviously inconsistent with the Gobi Desert under the scorching sun. Sia moved closer to him and said that she could not stand the cold. It was a completely different degree of cold from the snowy plains just now. That was cold on the body, but the coldness he released came from his soul. Ning Fei looked at the magic circle with his head and shook his head. There is no response. There was a little response not long ago, but there is no response at all here. This wilderness is the same as the snowy plains just now. Half of it is open, and the other half is the territory of the Divine Court. It is probably equivalent to the frontier forces stationed here. Gu Zhoming held the ball and swung it around. After all, this was the first star. Even if the headquarters of the Divine Court were not here, it was impossible that they did not leave any forces here. He walked around for a while and suddenly thought of something. In that case, we could go directly to their forbidden place. Since the places where the void nodes are set up are mostly places where the void, rules, and energy gather, this treasure land will not be left unutilized casually, just like the resting place in the snowy plains. Ning Fei tapped his palm. That makes sense. If we go there, this way I still remember. Yin Nuoxing looked back at the girl who was looking around with her little head on his shoulder. He was relieved to see that she was in good condition. This was the first time he had to deal with this kind of problem. Although there was no problem in theory, who knew if the reality would cause him trouble? Now, everything seemed normal. She might not have noticed anything and had no time to do so. She was busy using her eyes to see this world that was completely different from the snowy plains. She was probably too busy. He also had to carefully conceal the sensing energy she emitted. Little star, why do you keep releasing the air conditioner? Siyu habitually moved closer to him and asked. Then, she shivered from the cold and hurriedly retreated a distance away. Jing Yuanji heard the question and glanced at the girl who was as cold as ice. Probably because of her. Oh, you can see it? Yin Nuoxing tilted his head and looked at her. Jing Yuanji blinked. She did not shake her head or nod. I can see that there is something a little unusual about her, but, it seems to be shrouded in a layer of fog. I can't quite understand it. Lord Feng, do you know what's going on with her? Yes, of course I know. Yin Nuoxing nodded matter-of-factly. Seeing that they all turned their heads with interest, he smiled and kept them in suspense. But I won't tell you. By the way, if Yuanji can't see it at once, then I'll be relieved. Jing Yuanji touched her long hair in confusion. She did not understand. Siyu kept asking, but Yin Nuoxing refused to say anything. She could not do anything about it. However, his refusal to say anything made them even more curious. I can't tell you now. I'll tell you when the time is right. Don't worry, it won't be too far off. Yin Nuoxing spat a mouthful of white frost at Siyu and said with a smile, Are we going to the war ruins this time? I was thinking of bringing her along. It'll be a good time to deal with her problem. Dao Heaven could not help but mutter, Here it comes again. Another one. Yin Nuoxing, what a late familiar phrase. Did this girl really count everyone who was close to him? It's strange. The guards have increased a lot. There's still some distance between here and the camp. Usually, there wouldn't be such a tight security. Ning Fei scratched his head and looked back at Yin Nuoxing. He suddenly realized that they had kidnapped someone from another family. He did not know what position this girl had in the divine court. Even the other spaces had mobilized their forces to look for her so quickly. But why was she trapped in that dark place with such a high position? Yin Nuoxing was worried and strengthened the order and energy of the barrier. Even Min could not bear to see it. You don't need to do this. It's more than enough to guard against Yuan Shi. Hey, you kidnapped someone in someone else's house and swaggered around in someone else's territory. I'm very suspicious. It's better to put on a few more layers of protection to be safe. Yin Nuoxing smiled faintly. Feng Qing Wang pressed on the soft barriers and said, But there are almost 1,000 barriers here. Ha ha, don't worry about these details. Siyu watched as a group of armored soldiers gathered in this wasteland and rushed out from a few meters in front of them. Then they scattered in all directions. One of the soldiers turned half a circle on the spot and flew towards them. He was flying so slowly that he almost touched their faces. Siyu still had the interest to make a face at that soldier. They followed the direction of the soldiers and soon arrived at the place where the soldiers were stationed. A huge energy barrier shrouded the desert with a radius of thousands of miles. Tents that looked like Mongolian yurts were erected on the barren land in an orderly manner, like a military camp. They happened to see a group of soldiers who were ready to go soar into the sky from the military camp and fly towards the desert. Then they scattered in all directions. They sneaked into the barrier. As soon as they entered, they felt the movement of the formation balls. Without any instructions, they all flew towards the same place. Soon, they arrived at an oasis. It was a lake in the desert that spanned thousands of miles. It was so clear that it could reflect the blue sky. There seemed to be something under the lake, but it was someone else's plaything. Yin Nuoxing was not interested in it. He only came here to set up the small pillar of creation. He was not interested in what was hidden in the celestial court. Before putting down the snow girl, Yin Nuoxing made a snowball the size of a wash basin and gave it to her. It contained a huge amount of the power of rule. He reminded her to hold it well before heading to the center of the oasis. Buzz! After setting up the small pillar of creation here in the same way, Yin Nuoxing had just returned to everyone's side when he heard an ear-piercing alarm suddenly ring out in this desert, causing everyone to be stunned. Outsiders have invaded the celestial court. All troops assemble. A rough voice resounded through the desert. Yin Nuoxing and the others were still stunned when they saw a group of figures rushing towards them from the military camp, not far away. In an instant, they surrounded the oasis. A murderous aura swept across the desert. If they were surrounded by a group of empyrean gods of origin, Yin Nuashing might feel that it was very impressive. However, this group of empyrean gods of origin was just a group of empyrean gods of origin. It was not a big deal. It's not a big deal. Don't worry. We'll just walk over. Yin Nuashing carried the girl on his back and ignored the group of people. As he left, he saw a figure wrapped in armor and wearing a helmet with some kind of symbol walk to the front of the oasis. However, in just a short while, they had already slipped away. The man in armor walked to the front of the oasis and scanned the surroundings with his eagle-like eyes. However, he did not see anything. He could not help but frown. Before he could say anything, a soldier walked up and reported, "General, when we arrived, this place was already like this. There's definitely no one who has left, but there's no one here." The general let out a long sigh of relief. He scanned the oasis with his powerful spirit and confirmed that there was not a single soul in sight. He waved his hand in confusion. "We've all assembled. Go out and find Miss Shuang." "Yes, sir." As soon as a ferocious response was heard, the group of people who had surrounded the oasis so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through immediately dispersed and disappeared in an instant. The general looked at the oasis with one hand on his waist. After a while, he turned around and was about to leave. Suddenly, he saw something and squinted his eyes. He squatted down and picked up a thumb-sized ice crystal from the yellow soil. His eyes trembled. "What's going on? That little girl came here? But I really didn't see anyone just now. That little girl can't even control her own body. She can't hide herself." The general narrowed his eyes and stared at the ice crystal in his hand. After a while, he gently rubbed the ice crystal into water droplets and dissipated. He muttered. Sixth brother said that the little girl might be able to control her own power. However, it seems that she still can't control it well. If it's teleportation, when she can't control her own body, she will definitely be teleported to a place where the energy is concentrated. She might have accidentally teleported to this oasis and was intercepted by the slightly chaotic energy here. That's probably what caused the alarm. Where did she go? The general pondered for a moment and waved his hand. Second brother, third brother, seventh brother, the little girl might have found a way to teleport. Given her nature, once she has mastered this kind of power, we won't be able to catch her from the realm. We can only wait for her to appear. She just appeared here for a while and probably teleported away by now. Pay attention to the places where the energy is concentrated in your area. She might appear there. Sixth brother tells sixth brother and sixth brother. Although his guess was a little off, it just so happened that he hit the key point of places where the energy is concentrated. Yin Nuashing and the others happened to be heading to such a place. When this information was sent out, the defenses of the First Star Celestial Court increased by a few notches. Those directly under the Celestial Court were sealed by layers of spatial barriers that only allowed people to enter and not leave. The power contained within the barriers could prevent people from teleporting away. On another continent that was engulfed in a sea of fire, Yin Nuashing and the others stood on top of a mountain peak above a sea of magma. They looked at the area covered by layers of tortoise shells 100 miles away and could not help but twitch their cheeks. Those guys reacted too quickly. I just appeared there once, and they already set up defenses. Look at what this is. Spatial trapping barrier, void lock barrier, spatial barrier that restricts teleportation, and those few that will trigger the entire area if there's any abnormal spatial energy flowing. That's for external use, right? Is this something a human would do? That's right. Only a human would do something like this. Feng Qingwang could not help but let out a dry laugh. She ran her fingers through her hair and said, "Could it be that the moment you appeared, little stars, aura leaked out as well, so God knows what they're thinking. But let's just assume that for now." As Yun Nuashing spoke, she breathed out a large amount of frosty air from her mouth and nose. It was as if a ball of frost was being sprayed towards Feng Qingwang. It made her feel as if she was brushing against the face of the ice. In this scorching world of fire, Yin Nuashing mobilized an even greater amount of frosty air and the power of the natural order to cover her body. It was as if the girl on her back was really a snowman. She tried her best to lower the temperature of her body so that she would not melt in the heat. What do you say? Should we continue to sneak in? Min asked. There's no other way. We can't just break in directly. Yin Nuashing let out a long sigh of relief. Don't worry. This level is still within the acceptable range. Let's go. The security was much tighter. Both sides had wrapped themselves in a tight turtle shell. Yin Nuashing almost used her observer form. However, the infiltration this time was still quite smooth, until they saw that there were tens of thousands of people surrounding the magma pool. Even with Yin Nuashing's composure, she could not help but want to curse. Siyu saw it and exclaimed, "Wow, ambush from all sides." Yin Nuashing's face darkened. Over there were still 2 peak origin level experts guarding this place. How are they going to play this game? Chapter 1530. Yin Nuashing did not think that these people knew why they were here. The hiding place of the Pillar of Creation was the same as the Pillar of Creation in the Divine Realm. Without special methods, even the primeval god might not be able to get in. At that level, the most he could do was to see the existence of the Pillar of Creation secretly. It was unlikely that he would be able to do anything to the Pillar of Creation. Regardless of the cause and effect, it was a fact that tens of thousands of soldiers had gathered at the lava pool and 2 peak reciprocity realm cultivators. Therefore, it was not a good idea to rush out recklessly. Tens of thousands of soldiers. Anyway, Yin Nuashing brought people to the lava pool. She handed the ice girl to Siyu and asked her to carry 2 large snowballs to keep her cold. The ice girl was shivering from the cold. Although there are many soldiers with me, their quality is not that high compared to me. I can control them in an instant. As for those 2 who are ready to enter the void, Qing Wang, come back. Don't wander around in front of them. Feng Qing Wang stuck out her tongue and ran back in front of Soldier. With Yin Nuashing's countless barriers, she was like an invisible person. No matter how she wandered, she would not be noticed. Little star, have you thought about how to deal with them? Yin Nuashing crossed her arms and pondered. After pacing around for about a minute, she nodded. Come over here. Min, come over here. You two too. I will give you a divine artifact. Yuanji, help me create a false space. Divine artifact? Min and Ge Zhongming went over curiously. They saw Yin Nuashing fumbling around in his pendant for a while. Suddenly, he threw a golden object to them. When they reached out to catch the golden light, their expressions changed. They hurriedly controlled their bodies. Both of their hands suddenly sank down, pouring more power into the void. They didn't break the ground. Damn, this thing is too heavy. Ning Fei had to use all his strength to hold the divine artifact steadily. His face was a little pale. Min weighed the object in his hand and nodded. It's very heavy. I will add more strength. Then, as she tossed the weapon in her hand, she cast a bunch of blessings that could stimulate one's mind. The weapon, which was already shining with a golden light, was now tainted with the power of the void. Qing Yu silently took a few steps to the side and subtly put some distance between them. Come, my plan is that you 2 deal with the one on the left. Min, you deal with the one on the right. I will control the tens of thousands of soldiers. Yin Nuashing looked around and finally fixed her eyes on Min. Don't add more strength. I asked you to knock him out, not kill him. Don't worry, I know what to do. Then let's get into position. Yin Nuashing waved her hand. Ge Zhongming and Ning Fei held the items in their hands and stood before the peak reciprocity expert. They held the items in their hands and looked around. They wondered how they could be more direct. Min raised the divine artifact that gave off a terrifying presence and had become even more terrifying after being strengthened by the power of the void. He aimed it at the back of the other peak reciprocity expert's head. The 3 of them looked at Yin Nuashing and nodded gently. Yin Nuashing suddenly hovered half a foot above the ground. Her body shone with a pure, golden light as a vortex of time suddenly bloomed with her at the center. Midnight, temporal displacement. A ring of golden energy was released in that moment and swept out in all directions. The energy barrier was immediately removed as well. He suddenly descended with a tidal wave of time. No one noticed that everything in the world had fallen silent. The several tens of thousands of soldiers were all frozen in that moment. Their expressions, movements, breathing, and trembling weapons were all frozen. The two peak reciprocity gods were frozen in that moment as well. However, they were powerful enough for them to recover in a short amount of time. Yin Nuoxing released her control over them before they could recover, just so she could make them fall into a momentary trance. Hi, good evening. The heavenly origin god had just realized that something was wrong with the world when he suddenly heard a voice. He abruptly raised his head, only to see a basin-sized brick enshrouded in golden light rapidly growing larger and larger in his field of vision. Clang. Cu and the other maidservants, who were still inside the barrier, closed their eyes when they heard the sound of metal clashing. That sound was like iron being struck right next to their ears. They felt as if they were the ones being hit by a brick instead of him. It was so scary. Caught off guard, the Empyrean god of origin was hit squarely in the face by a brick made of some unknown material. Before the Empyrean god of origin could recover from a moment of temporal dislocation, he fell into another bout of dizziness. However, he was already mobilizing his divine right and divinity to stabilize his divine soul. Before he could complete these steps, however, he heard a violent commotion that sounded like a meteor crashing into him from behind. Go to sleep already. Ge Zhongming suddenly attacked from behind him, viciously smashing a brick towards the back of his head. The unlucky person who had already felt the world spinning around him felt like his head was about to split open under the attack of the brick that had been added to his soul and mind. However, he was still at the peak of reciprocity after all, at the 9th heavenly layer of reciprocity. Even if two people at the 8th heavenly layer of reciprocity wielded a god artifact, they would not be able to knock him over instantly. His many years of experience allowed him to make the best battle preparations in the instant he became delirious. He put on a good expression on his stiff face and glared at Ning Fei. Ning Fei and Ge Zhongming's hearts skipped a beat. After their first attack failed, the same thought popped into their minds. The two of them roared angrily and smashed the heavy brick into the heavenly god of origin again. You're going to shit. Bang. Don't look, don't look. Jing Yuanji hurriedly covered Cu and Feng Qinghuang's eyes when she saw such a brutal scene. Children shouldn't watch such a bloody scene. Cu and Feng Qinghuang both stuck out their tongues. They had seen far worse scenes in the past few years. The unlucky heavenly origin god didn't even get a chance to finish his sentence before he was struck by two more bricks, causing his eyes to roll back into his head. He swayed unsteadily, and just as he was about to faint, Min leaped over from the side and delivered another blow, causing him to completely pass out. Phew, that was such a close call. Ge Zhongming let out a sigh of relief. A peak heavenly god of origin sure has a tough head. Min's face twitched, and she said coldly, "Fix his posture. It's time to go back." Upon hearing this, the two of them turned to discover that the other heavenly origin god had already fainted, and his posture had been fixed in place by the power of the void. It was just at the huge bump on his head that was a little scary. The three of them fixed the unlucky peak heavenly god of origin like a puppet before returning to the army. Yin Nuoxing set up the energy barrier again and dispelled the temporal dislocation. The army of heavenly gods returned to normal, but it was as if nothing had happened at all. After setting up the small pillar of creation in the fake space set up by Jing Yuanji, she dragged it into the real world and covered it with her concealment technique. Only then did Yin Nuoxing let out a sigh of relief. It's done, it's done. All we need to do now is throw everything into that fake space, and everything will be fine. As soon as she said that, the small pillar of creation suddenly became pure white. A region of space suddenly expanded with the pillar of creation's movements, enveloping the entire sky. 3 streaks of pure, white energy suddenly shot into the sky from the first star of the divine court. They converged into a pillar of energy that no one could see and shot into the void, exploding into a huge ring of pure white energy. Many web-like energy veins appeared in the void, pointing in all directions. They dimmed very quickly, and only one of them did not dim immediately. It seemed to connect with something, and it gradually disappeared a while later. The second spatial node is done. Yin Nuashing clapped her hands. Even if the first star of the divine cord explodes, there won't be any more problems. There's still some time before the ruins open. Should we continue setting up spatial nodes, or wait for time to pass? Ning Fei asked from the side. Yin Nuashing shook her head. Let's not set up spatial nodes for now. Those points are all within this region of space. We've already set up a spatial node, and the locations of those nodes might change with the disturbance of this spatial node. They'll be pushed outwards by a certain distance. We need to wait for that region of space to calm down before we continue. As he said that, he carried the icy girl back onto his back. The group snuck out from there. Once they had left this place, they all let out a sigh of relief. Only then did Yin Nuashing find the time to say, "But there's nothing we can do right now. Let's find a place to rest and wait for the ruins to open." Nothing to do. Indeed, there was nothing to do. However, there were some things that needed to be dealt with depending on the situation. After leaving the continent covered in lava, Yin Nuashing and the others found a pavilion to rest. After settling everyone down, Yin Nuashing brought the icy girl to the cultivation room. Siyu and Feng Qing Huang, who followed behind him, couldn't help but exclaim when they saw him putting the girl on the bed. "Hey, little star, do you need me to keep a lookout for you?" Siyu giggled as she went over. Yin Nuashing knocked her head lightly. He took out the Book of Epic and placed it on the icy girl. Only then did he realize that he had missed a question. "I haven't asked for your name yet." The girl was silent for a moment. She reached out and touched Yin Nuashing's palm. She gently wrote a word on his palm. "Frost." Yin Nuashing nodded. "My name is Feng Ling. You should know the condition of your body. I'll check it for you now. If you don't want to, you can shake your head." Frost hesitated for a moment. Suddenly, she looked at Yin Nuashing with her dull eyes and nodded hesitantly. Yin Nuashing let out a sigh of relief. He controlled the Book of Epic to circle around Frost. He extended many energy threads to various parts of her body. His eyes were gradually dyed with pure white light. He carefully controlled the Book of Epic to check her body. However, he didn't dare to explore too deeply. He only took a simple look and put the Book of Epic away. He narrowed his eyes and murmured softly, "As expected, it's a flaw in this area, but logically speaking, it's very troublesome to repair it. I can only look at the war ruins." Phew! Yin Nuashing let out a long sigh. He waved his hand and threw a few ice cubes that contained the power of laws in every corner of the room. The temperature in the room instantly dropped. Siyu sneezed and quickly ran out. Yin Nuashing also got up and left. Seeing that Frost wanted to stand up as well, he quickly waved his hand and slowly pressed her back onto the bed. "We'll be next door and won't leave. If there's anything, just call me. Rest first. I'll take you out to play tomorrow." Frost thought for a moment and nodded. She obediently lay on the bed and didn't move. She looked like an ice sculpture. After closing the door, Yin Nuashing let out a sigh of relief again. When he turned around, he found that Jing Yuanji and the others were all waiting outside the door. Their orderly gazes startled Yin Nuashing. "What are you doing?" Jing Yuanji laughed awkwardly. She used Meimao to scan the closed door and Yin Nuashing with concern. She whispered, "Because I'm a little concerned." It was indeed a little concerned. Yin Nuashing didn't know how to answer. He glanced at Jing Yuanji, waved his hand, and walked to the hall. He left a few layers of soundproof barriers and carefully shielded the wisp of consciousness that was entangled with him. Only then did he whisper about Frost's matter. "Well, all of you should have felt something strange about her." Yin Nuashing casually sat on the sofa and started talking. Other than Siyu and Feng Qing Wang, everyone nodded honestly. Frost's abnormality was too obvious. Apart from the two adorable little girls sitting at the bottom, everyone here was at least a heavenly god of origin. If they couldn't feel the abnormality in her body, they would have wasted their cultivation. "I know, but I can't see what's going on at all." Ge Zhongming spread his hands. I've seen this kind of situation before. Life is entangled with the laws that make up the self. Her form is in a state of remaining complete and collapsing at any time. She has power, but seems to be unable to control it. It's as if there's a contradiction between herself and herself. Her body and consciousness are separated. I have the same feeling. At first glance, I almost thought that two people were put together. Ning Fei also said, from the perspective of the void, she doesn't seem to exist. Min looked at Yin Nuoxing and said, well, if you can see this, actually, it's about the same. Anyone who sees this scene would have the same thought. Although I've not seen her type before, I've seen the same situation as her. Yin Nuoxing scratched her hair and took a deep breath. She said softly, Frost, she is an origin life. She is a life created by the origin of the world. She is a life created by the origin of the world. The atmosphere in the hall changed instantly. Siyu and Fengqing Wang were still in a daze. The topic that was about to be discussed was beyond their comprehension. They could only put on a dazed expression. Among the others, Qing Yu and Dao Tian, who were special types, narrowed their eyes. They were a little dazed. Although this concept had never appeared in their minds before, it was not something that they could not imagine. The rest of the people who caused the atmosphere to become tense were Jing Yuanji, Min, Ning Fei, and Ge Zhongming. They all knew about this concept and probably had a lot of knowledge about it, so they understood in an instant. Origin life. Jing Yuanji was a little dazed. She suddenly widened her eyes and broke the atmosphere. No, Master Fengqing Wang, if she is an origin life with her laws and state, she should have been Yin Nuoxing wave her hand to calm her down. She is indeed an origin life. But as you can see, she is a little abnormal. She doesn't seem to be an origin life. Man-made? Min narrowed his eyes. And she is an individual with a flaw. There was a pure white light surging in Yin Nuoxing's eyes. I have created an origin life for some reason. He is still alive and well. I just don't know where he went. Ah, he was talking about Zero, a time life that was created with his own soul as the foundation. Man-made origin life has a lot of limitations. The one I created was also partly due to a coincidence. That is why he is still alive and well. But Frost, obviously, she did not encounter such a good coincidence. Jing Yuanji understood. Her eyelids drooped slightly. Without a cradle, she can't continue to perfect her form. She can only stabilize at this stage. Also, it is probably because she was born later. She was originally a life of order, but she was forcefully transformed into an origin life. So even if she has a flaw, she will not be disintegrated by the laws of the void. When the word disintegrate was mentioned, Yin Nuoxing's hand trembled slightly. He gritted his teeth and let out a long breath. The little angel felt his state of mind. She squatted down in his soul and touched the ground with her hand, trying to comfort him. She finally knew where his inexplicable sympathy and love for the girl came from. It was extremely difficult for an origin life to be born in the Deyuan realm. It was equivalent to fighting for the right to live with the void. It was not easy to fight for an origin life in the gap and the laws of the void, but it was only a peaceful place. To really live, it was not easy. Moreover, when the origin life was mentioned, this guy probably thought of Shi Xian and the two little girls who were space life. He had already seen the scene of the origin life being disintegrated by the laws of heaven and earth. He did not want to see it a second time. Lord Feng, Frost was born, transformed from the origin life of the water element? Jing Yuanji asked Yin Nuoxing. Yin Nuoxing twirled her bangs as if she was talking to herself. Elemental power is rare in other worlds. At least, this world doesn't have it. Then she belongs to the category of energy that is similar to the elemental power that constructs matter. Her structural laws have very serious problems. There are flaws, entanglement, and some of the laws have already collapsed but cannot be removed. Although I don't know which idiot did such an irresponsible thing, it is not completely impossible to solve. It is just a little troublesome. It can be solved? Yin Nuoxing nodded. I have a certain degree of understanding of the origin life. Innate or acquired defects can be compensated to a certain extent, but we need a place with a huge amount of origin life's power. A huge amount of origin life's power. There's it in the war ruins. The world there is full of origin life's power, and it will open tomorrow. Ge Zhoming knocked on his palm. So, we just need to endure until tomorrow. Yin Nuoxing let out a long breath. Along the way, we carefully protected her with the energy of the water element. At present, the situation seems to be stable. Those people probably locked her in the ice palace for a similar purpose. There's also a lot of stable origin life's power there. See, you listened for a long time, but did not understand a single sentence. At this time, she suddenly understood the last sentence. She raised her hand and said, "In short, keep the temperature low and don't let her melt." Everyone, Yin Nuoxing was speechless. However, looking at Shuang's appearance and the protective measures he had taken along the way, this description was indeed a little similar. It was just that when this girl said this, it was as if she had become a snowman. Chapter 1531. Due to the complexity and uniqueness of life forms born directly from world origin energy, the Void's own precepts had a hard time identifying such unusual life forms. It was like a black cloth covering something, and there was no way to tell what was hiding behind it. And the Void that belonged to Dumbo's kind would simply get rid of that thing along with the black cloth without any latent danger. But in reality, the origin life form was just a life form that had a mixture of Void rules and origin energy, twisting and mutating to follow another type of rules. But in reality, it was still the Void rules. It was just that the Void couldn't recognize it after changing its disguise. It automatically judged it as a foreign object and wanted to destroy it. It sounded simple, but that was the most difficult problem that the origin life forms had to face in their entire lives. They were not accepted by the Void, were not allowed to exist, and were defined as errors. They were born alone in a corner of the Void, unbeknownst to others, and would vanish without a trace when their cradle was broken. They had never existed. Yin Nuoxing knew this very well. He could not help but want to pay attention to the characteristics of this kind of life form. He could not help but want to understand it. He would not crown their struggle for survival with other meanings and words. They were actually the same as them. All of them were just trying to survive. They were floating in the general trend of the Void, but their way of survival was not the same as theirs. Shi Xian's death in the past was a thorn in his heart. It was a scene of collapse and return that he had never seen before. The eternal exile of the origin life forms. It was so dazzling that he could not look at it directly, and it was even more dazzling and grand than the Empyrean God's funeral. It was completely unforgettable. He would never forget that most dazzling scene, carving that memory into the depths of his soul so that he would never forget how he felt then. It was the moment he hated and felt the most powerless. Now that he thought about it, that was probably one of the main reasons why he became increasingly deranged later on. If there was a chance, those words held no meaning. He would not be bound by the past and would not dream of changing that tragedy. He only thought that if he could meet life forms like them in the future, he would, but what position did he have? What right did he have to forget it? He just wanted to do it. Whether it was to mend the crack in his heart or to project Shi Xian onto someone else, it was meaningless. He just wanted to do it and put into action. The pair of dark blue eyes opened gently. Frost looked at the wooden ceiling with a warm color and was a little dazed. Her memory seemed to have stopped at the cold and lonely ice palace. When she opened her eyes, she could only see transparent blue ice. After being in a daze for a while, she slowly sat up and met a pair of black eyes. This was the third time she had looked into this pair of eyes. She was actually more familiar with his back. Yesterday, she had been running around on his back and had seen a lot of new things. It was wonderful. "You're awake?" Yin Nuoxing said softly. Shuangqing nodded. Her jade-like hands propped herself up on the bed beside her and pressed into something soft like snow. She didn't need to turn her head to see that the bed she was lying on and the room was filled with snow-white energy balls that were about a foot wide. The slightly cold aura emitted from them made her feel very comfortable. She raised her head and called out his name to Yin Nuashing, but she couldn't make a sound. Yin Nuashing nodded, indicating that he heard clearly, and nodded. It seems that you're still in good spirits. There is no problem. I was worried that you would become weak after leaving that ice palace. Get up. Let's go out. Hey, you two, come here. Didn't you want to come in? Yin Nuashing turned around and pushed Siyu and Feng Qingwang forward from behind. The two girls saw that she woke up and smiled. They looked at each other for a while and then moved closer to her. After hearing about what happened to Frost in the hall, the two girls seemed to be closer to her. However, they felt a little awkward when they suddenly heard about it. So, they had to drag Little Star along. Feng Qingwang suddenly turned around and pushed Yin Nuashing out. Little Star, you go out first. We will tidy her up. Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes and walked out. He wanted to say that they would probably fight in the war site later. What was the point of tidying her up? However, if he said that, he would definitely get 3 pairs of eyes rolling. He didn't want to be slapped by them. It was a girl's nature to be beautiful. Speaking of this, he couldn't help but fall into deep thought. Xian and Feng liked to make him dress up. What kind of strange talent was that? Could it be that they liked to see others being beautiful? Could it be that this law also applied to him? And when he thought that the 3 girls were going to play for a while, the door opened from the inside. Siyu and Feng Qingwang took Frost out. Siyu came to Yin Nuashing's side and whispered in his ear, Hey, what do you think? Yin Nuashing glanced at Frost. When he saw her in the ice prison yesterday, although she wasn't shabby or unkempt, she wasn't neat either. She relied on her own appearance to support her. Now, after the 2 girls tidied her up, she looked more dignified and beautiful. He nodded, Yes, very beautiful. What else? Yes, very cute. That's all. Pfft. Siyu rolled her eyes and patted him on the back. You put so much effort into dressing up, but you only said those perfunctory words. I'm not good with words. If you can get one more word out of my mouth, I lose. Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes and waved his hand as he walked towards the hall. As he walked, he said, You are all very beautiful whether you dress up or not. There's nothing wrong with it. Siyu laughed and let him go. She and Feng Qingwang held Frost's hand and walked to the hall together. Early in the morning, Ning Fei and Ge Zhongming had already walked around the city and asked for some information. They also found out the exact time when the war site would open. Quite a lot of people have come. Although we already knew that there would be quite a lot of people heading to the war ruins, it seems like there are a lot more people this time. It is said that there are many people from hidden worlds that have never appeared before, but most of them are probably younger than us, or people of the same generation as us. Ge Zhongming was eating, but that didn't affect his speech at all. It is said that way. In fact, they're just a few thousand or 10,000 years younger than us. This world is just the length of a thread. There's not much difference. As for those who are younger than us, I think they will be involved. However, I don't think they will be involved in the circle of high-tier origins. Ning Fei said as he tidied up the table and poured a cup of tea for Yin Nuashing and the others. It's getting lively? Yin Nuashing raised his eyebrows and took a sip of tea. He let out a long sigh. Did something happen again? Or did someone know that something is going to happen? It's probably a coincidence. Ge Zhongming replied. A few days ago, there was the matter of the spring of astral essence. Now, the war site has appeared again. It's just a coincidence. Yin Nuashing was enlightened. He had almost forgotten about the spring of astral essence. However, it was not a big deal. He had transferred the spring of astral essence to a world that he carried with him. It lived in a corner and became a part of the universe. He did not plan to use it for anything. That's not entirely true. Ning Fei shook his head. He held a cup of tea and pondered for a while. After taking a sip of tea, he said, Yesterday, we heard that there was something stuck in the depths of the war site. That was why the abnormal power of the rules was exposed when the war site was about to open. Many people speculated that the thing stuck in the war site might be the source shard. Yin Nuashing stopped drinking his tea and lowered his head. Source shard? It's just a general statement. No one has seen what it is, and no one has confirmed whether there is something stuck in the war site. It's just a guess that something disturbed the war site. What kind of thing could make the war site have such a degree of turbulence. All kinds of strong people showed their magical powers and used their own means to deduce many answers. In the end, more people agreed that this source shard was a kind of power fragment that was directly born from the void and had the power comparable to a high-level life force. But it's useless to say that. Anyway, it won't be long before. Well, I think it's about time now. Let's set off now. No one will inform us of the opening time of the war site. Gu Zhongming wiped his hands and cast an inquiring look at Yun Nuoxing. Oh, okay. Anyway, it's nothing. Yun Nuoxing nodded, finished the tea, and slowly stood up with a sigh. When Ning Fei saw Shuang, he could not help but be stunned. He reminded him, by the way, the people of the Divine Court have issued an announcement and sent people to look for her. They will also go to the war site. You have to find a way to help her hide. We can't hide her. Yun Nuoxing shook his head directly. Everyone was stunned. They turned to look at him and saw him smiling bitterly. Although I want to take her to the war site where there is a huge power of law, she's a thing that is more special than the point of entanglement of law. The entanglement of law on her body is comparable to the weight of a region of the void. She is a little chaotic. At this time, we can't use more power of law to stimulate her. The energy barrier is not a problem, but to use the power of law and the power of order to cover her body is not a good idea. Yun Nuoxing sighed and took off his gorgeous long cloak that represented his identity. The surging energy changed the cloak into a hooded cloak and put it on her. He put the hood on her. We can only use some physical shielding. But it's not impossible to keep the energy barrier on when we go in, but it will be a little troublesome. Troublesome? Feng Qing Wang tilted her head. Won't it save us a lot of trouble if we stay invisible all the time? Yun Nuoxing looked at her and sighed. Yes, but usually with my physique, if I stay invisible and run around, I'm afraid that in the end I will. Ahem, I don't want to talk about it. The little angel and Jing Yuanji both let out a long "oh" to show that they understood. The more they wanted to avoid trouble, the bigger it would be. Over the years, they had been to many places with the idea that they did not want to encounter any trouble. As a result, they bumped into bigger trouble every time. This was the experience they had. After all, this was the most important thing that the void had decided. Yun Nuoxing shuddered and looked at the group of girls. Siyu and Feng Qing Wang were holding Shuang's arm and whispering something. Mei Mao kept glancing at him. Jing Yuanji was still sitting beside him with a smile. Dao Tian and Qin Yu tilted their heads and looked at each other. They were still playing chess leisurely. Min was expressionless, which made Yun Nuoxing very confused. He felt that something bad had just poked his back. Not long after, Yun Nuoxing led a group of people to the square in the city. At this time, the city, which had been boiling for a day or more, exploded with more blazing vitality. A large group of people rushed out from the tall pavilions, restaurants, and buildings similar to temples. Accompanied by an inexplicable, scorching aura, they all pointed to the same place. For a moment, the streets were filled with people, carrying Frost, whose entire body was shrouded in a gorgeous black robe. Yun Nuoxing stood high in the sky and looked down at the black mass of heads below. The boiling voices made him feel like his eardrums were about to explode. He trembled as he pointed down. You call this it's about to start? The destination is definitely not this place. This is just a teleportation point. The real place. Oh, isn't this the door? You'll know once you get there. The people here are only a part of the many worlds, Ning Fei said with a grin. Siyu looked at Yun Nuoxing. Seeing that he had freed his hands and wrapped Shuang's hair with his hair, she suddenly asked, Little star, doesn't your neck hurt? Oh, it's okay. It's just that my hair feels a little heavier. In the center of the square, a valiant figure dressed in golden light armor suddenly appeared. She held a 2-meter-long halberd in her hand. She was actually the guardian of the pass that he had seen at the pass. Her figure was fleeting, and it was obvious that she was not here with her true body. Yun Nuoxing glanced at her. She was still hiding in the void. The gatekeeper's eyes swept across the crowded square. The halberd in her hand drew an arc in the space in front of her. A huge portal suddenly bloomed in the sky. The vestibule of the ruins has been opened 2 hours ago. The space has not stabilized until now. Those who want to go to the ruins, please feel free to do so. She did not say much. After saying this sentence, she disappeared. Yin Nuoxing watched her disappear into the space. The people around them were frequent visitors who had been here 4 or 5 times or more. They seemed to be used to this kind of thing and did not say anything. After she disappeared, another group of people appeared in the space of the square. A group of armored figures stood in the front. They looked like commanders. Behind them, there were nearly 50 soldiers wearing the same simple armor and holding long spears and halberds. Yin Nuoxing and the others could not help but cover their faces. They saw some familiar faces among the commanders. 2 of them were knocked down by the bricks yesterday. One of them was the commander who wanted to stop them but did not make it in time. They did not know the rest. However, Shuang seemed to know them. When the group of commanders came out, Yin Nuoxing clearly saw her shrinking her body. Her hand, which was originally on his shoulder, was now pulling the back of his shirt. His shoulder was almost exposed. Go. Let's go. The 2 peak reciprocity experts in fire red armor waved their hands and charged into the teleportation gate that could not be seen on the other side. Behind them were the remaining commanders and the group of soldiers. Only after all of them had charged into the teleportation gate did the millions of lives on the square follow closely behind them. Let's go as well. Stay close. Even if there are obstructions, we won't be teleported away. Yin Nuoxing waved his hand and released a strong power of order from his body to lock the group of people together. Then, the group of people also soared into the sky and rushed toward the teleportation gate. In a few seconds, they followed the large group and rushed to the teleportation gate, getting closer to it bit by bit. When he was passing through the portal, he suddenly heard a strange sound. It was as if a voice had become blurred under the scouring of the sea of time, crossing billions of years to reach his ears. There were some changes in the senses of his spirit at this moment. There was some kind of chaotic factor that disturbed his senses. In an instant, it seemed as if 1,000 years had passed, but it also seemed as if only a few seconds had passed. The powerful power of order seemed to have collided with some kind of power, causing some tremors. Some dark red light appeared on Yin Nuoxing's body, forcibly breaking away from this strange state, pulling everyone's senses back to their own bodies from a distant place. Yin Nuoxing suddenly turned her head and widened her eyes. This voice was very blurry. She could not hear anything clearly this time. This time, Lord Feng? Jing Yuanji's voice suddenly sounded in their souls, causing Yin Nuoxing to raise his head. His breathing twitched. He looked around. This was a vast and cold starry sky. Thousands of stars shone their light over the entire star field. In front of them was a broken planetary belt. Countless huge rocks floated in this lonely star field without any stars. Who knew how many stars were piled up here, ignoring all factors and floating in this place motionlessly? At this moment, there was a large group of people standing in the place that looked like a pile of star ruins. They were the people who were in the square just now. They stood on a slightly spacious piece of debris. There was a trace of what seemed to be the wreckage of a building on this piece of debris, indicating that this star might have once nurtured life. It was just that no one knew what kind of grand or twists and turns it went through in the middle. In the end, it drifted here and became part of the countless wreckage. Lord Feng. Jing Yuanji saw his blank look and knew that he would always be distracted, so she reminded him softly, "You have been distracted for 10 minutes. 10 minutes?" Yin Nuoxing was stunned again. The moment his senses swept past, the moment his senses brushed past the voice, he thought it was only a breath's time. "Did you feel anything just now?" Jing Yunji thought for a moment and said softly, "After entering the portal, our senses seemed to have been thrown far away. Lord Feng, you pulled our consciousness back. The next second, we appeared here." "Oh," Yin Nuoxing responded slowly. He looked at this place and pondered silently. He shook his head and did not think about the strange thing just now. After confirming that there was nothing wrong with their group, he raised his head and asked, "This is the front yard of the ruins?" "Yes, the teleportation point of the first star of the God's Court is here. It is one of the entrances." Gu Zhoming nodded. He raised his handsome face and received the light of the stars billions of light years away. He raised his finger and pointed forward. "That is the war ruins, a corner." Yin Noashing and the others turned their heads and looked in the direction he was pointing at. It was a gray ball of light that gathered the power of rules and endless energy. There were many blurry lines on the surface, as if they were looking at a storm or a whirlpool from the side. It also looked like a storm. There were countless colors of light flashing inside, as if there were energy explosions happening frequently. He could not help but feel his heart skip a beat just by looking at it. Why did it look so much like a god's destruction storm? Chapter 1532. In the depths of the starry sky, the gray fog was releasing a bright light of energy, as if there was a world in it. The hazy colors rolled up with unclear lines, and it looked like a huge storm. Yin Nuashing picked out the two images from his memory and overlapped them. It really did look like the storm of divine destruction. However, the storm here did not have the destructive power of the storm of divine destruction. It was very weak, very small. If the storm of divine destruction was really the forbidden area, no one would be able to enter the war ruins. This place would become a forbidden area. "Master Feng," Jing Yuanji whispered into Yin Nuashing's ear. Seeing him tremble, she could not help but ask, "Master Feng, did you see something? You have been a daze." Yin Nuashing tilted his head and looked at her. He nodded hesitantly and looked at the light of the gray storm in front of them. "There, it looks like the storm of divine destruction. There's a diluted aura. It is so weak that I can barely feel it. If I had not been there and been tortured by the storm of divine destruction, I might not have recognized it." Both the little angel and Jing Yuanji were stunned. The former spoke in their souls and said in a serious voice, "Are you sure?" Yin Nuashing shook his head. "I am sure that it is the storm of divine destruction. However, this storm is very weak. It is probably not at the same level as the storm in the origin world. The storm in the origin world would not weaken even after dozens of eras. The storm of divine destruction would not weaken. So, as it was related to the origin heavenly god, the atmosphere suddenly became a little strange. Siyu and Feng Qingwang had been with them for many years and had heard a little about it. However, they did not know much about it. The others were probably just exposed to it. They were not mentally prepared and were a little confused. A low sound wave of energy suddenly bloomed in the starry sky. Yin Nuashing and the others turned their heads. Gu Zhoming and Feng Qingwang looked up at the space and said, "It is about to open." At the same time, countless figures suddenly appeared in this part of the starry sky. They had been waiting here for a long time, but only appeared at this moment because of the commotion from the ruins. Countless champions turned their eyes there. The newcomers were eager to give it a try, while the regulars were relatively calm. Their minds were filled with the situation they encountered last time, hoping that it could become their experience this time. Every situation in the war ruins was vastly different from the last time they came here, and the experience they had from last time only gave them a little bit of experience, and they were almost on the same starting line as those who came here last time. After a few energy vibrations from the storm, the side facing everyone suddenly arched as if something was about to rush out of the storm. When the tall protrusion expanded to a size of 1,000 miles, it suddenly stopped. The top of the protrusion began to collapse inwards, revealing a huge hole. It looked like a huge vortex that stretched out into the starry sky. Yin Nuashing felt a malicious gaze. He turned his head and saw a group of people who followed the dragon bones in the distance, staring at him with malicious intent. There were about 30 or 40 people, which was more than the number of people he saw the other day. The dragon bones also cast its gaze on him, looked at him for a while, and then looked at Frost on his back. After a while, it turned its gaze away, not revealing any hostility. There are so many more people. Siyu looked at the starry sky around them. Her eyes flashed. Two waves of people came out. This is just the entrance to the starry sky. There are other entrances. How big is this war ruins? Very big. Extremely big. Gu Zhoming pondered. He wanted to give a more appropriate answer, but he could not think of a suitable one even after thinking for a long time. It said that there are hundreds of worlds and tens of thousands of spaces. That's probably the only way to describe it. No one knows how big it is in reality. I think the so-called hundreds of worlds and spaces are just a bluff. The war ruins have never revealed its full appearance. Even peak reciprocity cultivators can't see the situation there, so how can they say anything about it? Uffed. A muffled sound suddenly came from the energy storm, startling some of the people who couldn't help but raise their feet. They froze in the starry sky, and after waiting for a while, a colorful energy suddenly gushed out from the vortex. Like an energy whip, it streaked across the space hundreds of thousands of kilometers in front of the vortex. The rich and violent energy and the power of laws caused many people's expressions to change, and they hurriedly retreated. The long whip danced in the starry sky like a snake, and after about a dozen seconds, it slowly dissipated into the energy of the starry sky and returned to calm. The people who were watching from even further away all changed their expressions. The people who had been here before were rather puzzled and doubtful. The space connected to the war ruins this time seemed to be far more dangerous than they had imagined. Aside from the rewards, they might also encounter fatal dangers. Just the energy just now was more powerful than any energy they had ever felt in a war ruin. It seems that the speculation was not too surprising. This time, just the energy released by the opening of the gate caused such a commotion. The disturbance of energy in those areas is probably at the level of a high-grade origin, Gu Zhoming said softly. Yin Nuoxing heaved a sigh of relief when he saw the energy disappear. His heart skipped a beat when he noticed that it seemed to be a god's destruction storm, and he was sweating profusely. Now that he didn't sense anything similar to the origin energy in the energy just now, he relaxed. To be honest, he didn't want to have any karmic entanglements with the origin heavenly god and the others. Anything related to them was a matter of life and death. Although the results were always daunting but not dangerous, the ups and downs along the way were really unbearable for him. Originally, he was ready to face the second origin ruin. The first one was the origin world. However, he found out that it was just a false alarm. Now, he breathed a sigh of relief and felt that his whole body was twice as light. Frost felt that his mood was unstable. She drew a question mark on his shoulder with her little hand and then slowly wrote, "What's wrong?" "Nothing." Yin Nuoxing shook his head and responded to her in his mind. "I thought of something that scared me. It was just a false alarm." Frost responded softly and did not say anything more. She carefully straightened her body and looked at the starry sky with her gray eyes. The light of hundreds of millions of stars in her eyes made her look like she was about to come to life. When the storm completely calmed down, the two commanders in red armor stepped forward. One of them warned everyone, "The entrance will change every 5 minutes. At present, we only know that it will change the location of the ruins and make all of us stagger. The further we go, the more unstable the rules of the entrance will be. When we go in, we will encounter more difficulties. If you don't want to die before you succeed, you'd better go in first while the entrance is stable." Yin Nuoxing felt a little strange. The people of the divine court seemed to have been guiding them, but logically speaking, the existence of this place had nothing to do with them. The divine court is the true ruler of this void area. Most of the people who come here are from the world of the divine court. They are more or less related to the divine court. They could be considered as 1/10 of their own people. As the big brother of this void area, it won't be a loss for them to guide the newcomers and remind the regulars who are a little bit senile. I think the other dominators of the void probably think the same. Ning Fei replied, "But this is the answer on the surface. God knows if they are secretly thinking that these silly people have to be explained again. It's so troublesome, or something. Everyone, as the dominator of the void, the divine court shouldn't have so many psychological tricks to guide the newcomers, right?" As soon as the divine court finished speaking, many people had already jumped out and flew toward the whirlpool. Some of the divine court members also rushed into the whirlpool with a group of soldiers. From the looks of it, they probably want to split into 3 groups and go to 3 different areas. There were quite a number of people who entered the arena with quite a lot of momentum. Before entering, they would first show off their powerful strength to prevent others from disturbing them. Some of them were indeed strong enough to have such qualifications, but some of them seemed to be strong on the outside but weak on the inside. Dragonbone and the others rode toward the entrance of the vortex in a streak of starlight. The 2 people behind him suddenly sneered at Yin Nuoxing and the others. "You'd better pray that you don't meet us. Otherwise, the starry sky may be stained with blood." Dragonbone said nothing the entire time. He glanced at Yin Nuoxing and the others a few more times curiously before silently charging into the vortex with his people and disappearing. The provocative voice before contained the power of laws, and it was very loud. Everyone in outer space heard it. Many people looked at Yin Nuoxing and the others as if they were waiting for a good show. If they did not react at all after being provoked like that in the ruins of war, they would probably become a laughingstock. The ruins of war were not really a place for peaceful cultivation. There would definitely be slaughter and battle. No one would make way for someone else. "You've left pretty quickly. What's the point of running so quickly?" Yin Nuoxing suddenly sighed gloomily. With a gentle flick of his finger, the power of laws and laws drifting through outer space appeared like a net, stunning everyone. They could not help but shiver as they watched the net-like energy disappear into his body. There was no lack of peak reciprocity life forms here, but no one had sensed when a net had appeared. Yin Nuoxing waved his hand. "Let's go." Now. But it's almost time now. Why don't we wait for the next space?" "Ugh," said Guzhoming. He saw that Yin Nuoxing and the others had already moved very far away. He looked at Ning Fei and smiled bitterly before following them in a hurry. There were still quite a few people left in the starry sky. They were all people who planned to go to other areas. At this moment, they calculated that it was about time and retreated from the door. Every time the space changed, there would be a small-scale energy fluctuation. It was about the same as the movement caused by the energy whip when they first opened the door. No one would feel good if they would be hit by it directly. The people in outer space stared at Yin Nuoxing's group in doubt. They watched as they gradually approached the vortex, and the word "die" appeared in their heads. They silently counted the time, and when it was about time, the vortex suddenly stopped. The entire vortex extended even further into outer space and expanded by a lot. Strands of chaotic energy shot out from the vortex, erupting with a bright light that caused the expressions of many people to drastically change. The eruption of energy was close to peak reciprocity. Yin Nuoxing waved his hand, and the incoming energy all brushed past the space several hundred meters in front of them and surged into outer space in all directions. It stunned the people who could not help but approach. They all retreated in a hurry when they saw that the energy was about to hit them. The energy that brushed past them had unintentionally expanded, and the range of the attack had increased as well. The people who could not escape in time all turned around with gritted teeth. Energy surged around them. Clearly, they planned on forcefully enduring it. Bang! An intense energy storm suddenly burst out in space. Countless spots of light blossomed one after another, as if countless stars had gathered there. By the time those people finished dealing with it in a hurry and turned around, there was only the aftermath of the teleportation left in the vortex. Everybody was stunned. A lot of people had planned to head to the secondary space, but after seeing the situation, they decided not to. They would just have to fight the people who were heading to the secondary space from other places. It was not that nobody could do that, but it was unlikely that they could do it so easily. Those who were empty-handed could be split into those who were sweating profusely and those who were doing it with ease. Those were 2 different levels. If they couldn't see the difference, their trip would have been in vain. They might as well just turn around and leave. Everybody in space had the same feeling. Nobody entered the secondary space after waiting for 5 minutes. Everybody looked at each other in bewilderment and couldn't help but smile awkwardly. When the vortex changed again, a large group of people squeezed in one after another. Their vision and senses were not swept into the whirlpool-like scene. That was just an external image and concept. In fact, it was like jumping into a portal. As they jumped into the portal at the most unstable time, the teleportation process was a little bumpy. After a while, Yin and the others arrived on the other side of the door. Their feet landed on the ground, and they stood steadily. They immediately raised their heads and looked around. They had landed on a continent. It wasn't a small continent, but it didn't have the usual vibe of living creatures. It was full of death and darkness. Even the continent itself was unusually broken. It had been divided into dozens of parts, but they had been glued together by some kind of energy. They were still connected and would probably break apart at the slightest touch. Looking up, one could see the boundless starry sky. Chaotic and distorted sparse starlight spread across the boundless stars and descended upon this shattered continent. Some kind of aura of desolation and destruction permeated this star region, as if it had experienced countless deaths and destruction but did not welcome a new life. It was a little like the aura of the Great Reincarnation, but in the last Great Reincarnation, the turbulence of the void, not even that aura was left behind. Therefore, this should be the void and the world itself after the Great Reincarnation, the aura of utter destruction that withered all things in decayed time. Time and space show signs of abnormality and disorder. The flow of time seems to have stopped and been delayed. Jing Yuanji looked at the starry sky and muttered. She then pointed in a direction. Many signs of chaotic energy seemed to be coming from that direction. Lord Feng, do you want to go and take a look? Yin Nuoxing shook her head. There's no hurry. I also saw a lot of things in this space. The power of the broken laws is very ancient. They have been in a state of destruction for eras. Let's walk around the area first. There were still many things left on the broken continent that they had landed on. The forests and mountains were filled with ancient vibes. Although the trees looked green, it didn't mean that they were still alive. In fact, those things had already been frozen along with the time when the starry sky died. What was left here was just the image of the last moment of the entire world when it experienced the end of the world. The remains of the past. See you, Qing Huang. Use your hearts to look at this destroyed world. Yin Nuoxing said as he walked. He casually placed his hand on a pale tree. There was a feeling of physical contact. However, with a light push, the pale tree suddenly exploded into hundreds of pieces. Like energy particles, law fragments, and other things, the fragments drifted to the side. The fragments became transparent like shadows. They found a good place in a new place. The energy particles and the fragments were formed. Then, a pale tree suddenly appeared on the barren ground. There were no traces on the ground, as if it was originally there. Yin Nuoxing raised his foot and fiercely stomped on the ground. A huge pit with a radius of 10,000 feet suddenly appeared on the ground. Everyone was shocked. Just as they were about to jump up, they realized that they were still standing on the flat surface of the huge pit. They weren't stepping on space. The ground had clearly sunk down several hundred feet in front of them. Just as they were puzzled, they saw that the huge pit slowly protruded, as if time was flowing backward. The crack closed and disappeared. In the end, the ground returned to its original state. There were no traces of the huge pit from before. Solidification. At the moment of death, there will no longer be any changes. This is a sculpture world. Min's cold voice sounded faintly. Its laws have been fundamentally shattered. The key structural laws are missing. It's just a sculpture that can't change. Yin Nuoxing snapped his fingers to express his agreement. Then he continued, those damaged laws and existing laws have all been thrown into space. That's why this space has such a high concentration of law fragments and law power. Things can't be changed using normal methods, just like how we can't change an image in the past, but we can change that image when time flows to the present. All we need to do is to use the power of order and the power of the laws. Pure white light condensed on Yin Nuoxing's hand. Wherever the light shone, faint signs of squirming appeared in the space. Some white light spots appeared out of thin air. Then they slowly gathered in his palm. After a while, they condensed into an energy ball in his palm. The pure white light was wrapped in various colors of energy. Crash! The surrounding trees and the pale white tree suddenly trembled. Then they turned into grayish-white smoke and drifted into the distance. The matter itself has already disappeared with the death of this world. However, its form is left behind. The endless law power from the void filled in the hole where the matter had disappeared and turned into everything that should have existed in this world of death. Yin Nuoxing stared at the light ball in his hand and frowned. That's right. It's not very pure. That's not the point. This part of the law power is useless. It's all fragments. There's nothing that I want. In conclusion, all the law power in this world comes from the void itself. Some of it is formed through the influence of the world itself. Moreover, the law power has a strong presence of time. There's also something else. Sigh. I'm too lazy to talk about it. Anyway, you can think of it as the law power in this world is purer than the law power in the outside world. If there's a quality to it, it's better. However, it's not as good as the realm of the gods. If you want to use it, remember to use the method I taught you. Feng Qing Wang suddenly had an idea. Then, how does it compare to other worlds? Yin Nuoxing paused for a moment. He had never thought about this question. He lowered his head and thought for a while. Then he said, it's stronger than 80% of the source worlds in the upper planes. And this is just the space we just entered. If what they said is true. Feng Qing Wang winked at him and laughed softly in his ear. If that's the case, we might see something unexpected if we go deeper. Yin Nuoxing nodded. Then he had an idea. Then let's go in and take a look. Chapter 1533. This was a destroyed world, a world that had been destroyed as a battlefield. The images imprinted by the shattered laws were just shadows left behind after the destruction. They were completely preserved by the void and laws of this place, and did not melt into nothingness. They could still vaguely see the various scars left behind from the battle. It was still unknown how this world was destroyed and destroyed. Perhaps it was during a violent collision of rules. The storm destroyed something in the conceptual layer of the rules, causing the entire world to be destroyed in a collapse. Perhaps the world barrier was broken through, and the void that flowed backwards mixed with the chaotic energy on the battlefield at that time. The energy of the void instantly destroyed this world, and the mixed energy preserved the scene of this world's catastrophe, forming such a sculpture. Now, the scars of war were all over the world, and they were all sculptures of the power of rules. The aura of the battle back then had all faded away, and it was difficult to guess what scale of battle had taken place back then. The boundless starry sky was filled with motionless fragments and power of laws. Shattered planets and stars floated in the sky, losing the power to rotate. Exploded star clusters maintained the scene of them falling apart, and even the starlight was frozen in the scene of them trying to cross the star system. Although they had expected this, the starry sky was really empty. There was nothing but the power of laws, and even the other origin energies were tainted with the power of laws of this world. Yin Nuoxing liked to look at the starry sky, but the cold and dead starry sky, forget it. The group strolled in the starry sky, slowly moving toward the place that Jing Yuanji had pointed out. Yin Nuoxing patiently taught Siyu and Feng Qing Wang how to deal with the power of laws in this destroyed world. She did not hide her words, but Dao Heaven and Qing Yu listened attentively. After a while, when Yin Nuoxing felt that it was enough, she stopped talking and looked back to see the four girls guiding the power of laws as they walked. She could not help but chuckle. The effect was not bad. The power of laws in this space was indeed very useful, and it was very good to use as a reference. Directly absorbing part of the power of laws was also possible, but dealing with the fragments and imprints of laws would be a little more troublesome. She had to wash away the imprints and imprints of laws on the absorbed part of the power of laws before she could use it. If it was an ordinary person, they would be able to climb up several levels, just by using the power of laws and fragments of laws in this destroyed world. However, the people he taught and the path he pointed out could not be measured by ordinary standards. No matter which aspect it would take a lot of effort. The little hand on Yin Nuoxing's shoulder moved a few times. Yin Nuoxing turned to look at her and saw that she was looking at the starry sky. Even if it was an image that had been destroyed and frozen, a fake starry sky, she was still looking at it very seriously. Perhaps what she wanted to know was not whether this starry sky was real or fake. She just wanted to see the scene other than the ice prison. Even if this world was just an image, she was still looking at it very seriously. Ah, yes, I have to help you solve this problem first. Yin Nuoxing chuckled softly. She had pinned her hopes on this war site, but she did not have too much hope. She thought that it was just a place with a lot of power of laws, but she did not expect to find the origin energy entangled with the power of laws and fragments of laws. Those things were exactly what she needed. She thought that if the things she was looking for could not be found, she would have to spend a lot of effort to find them. Now, she could just use the materials on the spot. Yin Nuoxing's consciousness went into the soul and landed lightly in front of the little angel. How is it? Have you found a suitable place? The little angel shook her head and stretched out her 10-foot-long wings to wrap around half of his body. A feather swept his cheek and said, "It is indeed a place with a lot of rules, but it is also very chaotic because of that. It is a little difficult to find the power of laws and fragments that are suitable for frost. It is not impossible, but there are a lot of them, and they are very scattered. There is no place that is particularly concentrated. I have thrown the location and coordinates to you. Here, look at it." Yin Nuoxing looked at the place that the little angel had pointed to in her memory. He did find a lot of things that he was looking for, but he shook his head and said, "It is indeed those things, but it is not enough. It seems that we can only look deeper and hope that there is something more suitable. Can't we make it up with something from the realm of the gods?" the little angel asked. Yin Nuoxing shook his head and said, "No, her structure is missing a few key parts, and her form is very fragile. If we use those things to stimulate her at this time, her form may collapse. Also, before the form of the origin is mature and perfect to the best state, those foreign things seem to be unable to affect them. Xishuan told me that. What is the best state? I'm not sure. I only know that Xishuan said that she has not reached that level. Generally, being able to leave the cradle without being disintegrated by the rules of the void is already considered a mature form. This is a sign. But before entering the next stage, if she is fatally injured, like Xishuan, the rules of the void will..." Yin Nuoxing's face turned gloomy as he spoke. The little angel quickly covered his mouth with her wings and said, all right. Don't think about that." She could not help but sigh. Xishuan's death was still a thorn in his heart, and it was constantly triggered to recall the past. She felt a pain in his heart just by feeling his emotions, let alone him. "It's okay. Pain can stimulate me to stay awake." Yin Nuoxing shook his head and pulled away the feather. He said softly, "I still can't let go of the past. But this is good, this is fine. I can't let go of these things. Even if the void is burned to ashes and the nothingness becomes eternal, I can't forget. I thought that I was right and replaced the fate of meeting Xishuan with other origin life, just to keep this part of memory alive." The little angel was speechless. She could not help but mutter, "Masochist. Now that you mention it, it's a bit like that." Yin Nuoxing smiled silently. There were many places where the power of the rules gathered in the starry sky. Those star clusters, galaxies, and nebulas. These massive structures gathered more power of the rules than other places. Yin Nuoxing and the rest focused on those places. After circling around the starry sky for a long time, they did find something. He was also looking for those star clusters, the parts that could restore frost form. But they were too fragmented and too little. He took away a part of the rule fragments and the power of the rules in 3 or 4 galaxies. But in the end, he could only condense a ball of less than half a foot in size in his hand. It's still a lot less. Yin Nuoxing looked at the ball in his hand and could not help but sigh. Although he said that he did not like it, He still had to keep it as a backup plan. If there was nothing in it, it would be stupid to come back and take another trip. This is just this space. Min scanned the starry sky and did not find any more of the power in his hand. It's empty. As expected, this is just one of the spaces. Yin Nuashing nodded and looked at other places in the starry sky. If I'm not mistaken, there must be other spaces, and it's just that this space has been cleaned out by us. This place is actually quite big, much bigger than an ordinary source world. If we are patient, we should be able to see a bigger space. Yin Nuashing lowered his head and saw a slender white jade arm stretching out from beside him. She stretched out her finger and carefully tapped the ball in his hand a few times. He turned his head and saw Frost's curious look. He could not help but smile and said, "Do you feel a little close to it? Do you want to touch it and eat it?" Frost poked the ball a few times and nodded gently. Her dim eyes seemed to want to forcibly release some light. Yin Nuashing could not help but laugh. It seemed that he did not find the wrong power of the rules. He was just looking for it based on theory. In fact, it was up to her, as the Empyrean god of origin, to judge it herself. Now that he saw her reaction, it could not be wrong. Don't worry, don't worry. Yin Nuashing patted her arm and said, "It's not enough now. And if we just eat it, we won't be able to achieve the same effect." Shuang blinked and nodded. She retracted her hand back to his shoulder and buried half of her face in his shoulder. She carefully looked at the starry sky, trying to divert her attention. However, her line of sight would always drift to the ball in Yin Nuashing's hand, intentionally or unintentionally. They could not help but chuckle in their hearts when they saw the ball. Yin Nuashing looked at the situation of Siyu and Feng Qingwang. He saw that they had collected a lot of power of the rules, so he stopped and began to teach them some things. He was just teaching them how to deal with the collected power of the rules so that they would not encounter a cliff when taking shortcuts. Even Jing Yuanji and Gu Zhongming stopped what they were doing and came over to listen to this big boss impart his experience. From time to time, they would show a thoughtful expression and nod from time to time. Yin Nuashing suddenly turned his head and looked to the side. He frowned slightly. "What's wrong?" Jing Yuanji instantly switched from good student mode to battle mode. Her energy surged as she looked around vigilantly. There's suddenly a trace of life in this starry sky. Yin Nuashing looked around for a moment and fixed his gaze in one direction. "It's over there." Min looked in that direction. "There's someone." Teleportation. They came from another space. Well, that's expected. These spaces have always been connected. I have some small ideas about this space. If there's a chance, I'll go and verify it. Yin Nuashing looked at the starry sky with a faint smile. Then he frowned. I didn't expect someone to run to another space in such a hurry. Could it be that the competition in the other space is very intense? Gu Zhongming thought for a moment. Maybe they came from another place. After all, this war site is very large. The territories of the Void Lords are all around this war site. It's right in the middle of this huge void area. Yin Nuashing asked. Well, it has many entrances. The entrance is controlled by the Celestial Court, and several others are the safest ones. There are also small loopholes in other places. If you don't want to go so far and you're strong enough, you can go in from those small entrances. As long as you can withstand the energy impact when you enter the door, it'll be fine, Ning Fei said. Boom! The sound of energy destruction with the power of the rules came from very far away in the depths of the starry sky. It attracted the attention of Yin Nuashing and the others. That was the direction where they had just sensed the movement of teleportation. It seemed that there was more than one group of people teleporting in at one time. Maybe a group of people came together. As soon as they arrived, they couldn't wait to attack. The movement was quite loud, and the continuous shock waves probably made people think that it was a series of stars exploding. Yin Nuashing glanced over and shook his head, showing no interest. He turned around and left with his people, intending to create some distance between them. He could not be bothered to get involved in those strange battles. He was already a restless factor. If he got involved in other people's battles, he was afraid that he would become the #1 enemy of the Void. Moreover, the process was as strange as it could get. Even he himself could not react in time. following the arrival of another group of people in this deathly, silent world. Even more people barged into this space. The moment the other people met the other people, they started fighting with red eyes, causing Yinhua Xing and the others to be dumbfounded. It felt as if they had come in a fight, and not because of the rules here. Was it like this in the past? Yinhua Xing pointed at the battle scenes in the distance that were constantly erupting with energy, and could not help but ask Ge Zhongming. Ge Zhongming scratched his cheek. When we came here, it wasn't so exaggerated. Basically, we didn't interfere with each other and did our own things. Unless we really met a lot of people fighting for the same place. Ning Fei said, although these spaces are connected, it's not as easy as you think to switch between these spaces. Sometimes you can't go back to the previous space when you go to another space. The space barrier here is very strange. It's hard and can be torn apart easily. But if you want to cross it, you can't exert any strength for a long time. In this way, every space is actually being fought over by countless people. Sometimes you can't necessarily find what you want. It's a wasted trip, and even your life for nothing. Yinhua Xing scratched his head. It sounded a little strange, but he was not worried that they couldn't switch spaces. As long as it was not a special space like the origin space, the origin world, or the source world, he should be able to handle it. Taking advantage of the time when those people were shouting and killing like idiots, Yinhua Xing brought Siyu and the others to quickly sweep past the areas of this destroyed world that had not been affected by the battle, looking for the things they needed. Sometimes they would directly move an entire star away, or even put away an entire star cluster. Such a simple and crude method of handling things made Ge Zhongming and Siyu's liver ache. Many people probably had such thoughts in their hearts, but there were probably not many people who could do this. Phew, okay, before those noisy people come over, you guys can digest here. Yinhua Xing landed on a fragment of a continent that was still intact. He threw all the people he just got to see you and the others. He waved his hand and urged them, I've helped you deal with a considerable amount of the power of the natural order. Treat the rest as accumulating experience for yourselves. You can deal with it yourselves. It's not a problem to break it. Just treat it as practice. Ge Zhongming and Ning Fei's cheeks reddened again. Practice and whatnot were too generous. If the power of the natural order here could be condensed into a stable law crystal and thrown outside, who knows how many people would fight over it. After setting up some magic arrays, Yinhua Xing guided Siyu and the others to enter the state. He gently placed Frost on the ground beside him, and he also lazily leaned on the ground. He stretched his body, and before he could yawn, he suddenly felt a wave of not weak spatial fluctuation coming from beside him, which made them all turn their gaze. 100 miles away from this broken continent, an extremely unstable spatial crack suddenly appeared, and a group of people slowly walked out from it. When they saw this spatial crack, they couldn't help but be startled, and their faces revealed a trace of surprise. When they saw the group of more than 40 people, Yinhua Xing and the others' expressions immediately became a little strange. Coincidentally, at this time, the few people who were leading the group also felt some other auras and turned their eyes over. Their eyes immediately showed a hint of mockery. They walked towards the group of people who were leading the group and said, It seems like you guys didn't listen to what I said before. And you guys are so unlucky to have encountered us, even after coming here. I'm afraid this void can't hold you guys. The person in blue shook his hand, and a long spear appeared in his hand. He raised the spear and slapped it on his other hand. The aura on his body began to surge. The rest of the people staggered and surrounded the fragment of the continent. Their cold eyes were filled with boundless killing intent. Yinhua Xing stood up lazily and slowly covered Frost with a layer of dark red energy barrier. Then he also covered Siyu, Qing Yu, and the other two girls who were sitting there in a state of enlightenment. Min thought for a moment and opened the void barrier. He then pointed his finger at himself. You still want to resist? Do you think you can still walk out of here? If you just sit there and let us kill you, we can still let you die a quick death. One of them sneered. Yinhua Xing looked around and finally fixed his eyes on the person in blue. He said softly, Where's Dragon Bone? You think you're worthy of mentioning His Excellency Dragonbone's name? One of them sneered. The person in blue held his spear and gestured a few times at Yin Nuashing. He said indifferently, "What's the harm in telling you a dying person? Dragonbone has gone to compete for the last slot in the war ruins. But that has nothing to do with you. You can go now." "Oh." Yin Nuashing nodded and waved his hand to cover the blue-clothed man with a layer of dark red barrier, causing everyone to be startled. Then, he raised a purplish-black greatsword and fiercely stabbed it into the ground. A ring of dark red energy suddenly shattered with him as the center, and a storm erupted from his body in an instant, sweeping across the entire starry sky. An extremely sharp energy shriek reverberated in everyone's ears. The starry sky of the shattered space instantly dimmed, and the power of law in the entire starry sky was boiling and rioting because of this energy storm. The 40 people, except for the blue-robed man, were instantly reduced to ashes the moment they collided with this space. The blossoming energy rain disappeared before even a flower bloomed. Wow, this move again. Ning Fei was already very calm. The last time he was covered in the energy barrier, he was sent flying millions of miles away. This time, he pressed Gu Zhoming on the ground and pressed the two of them on the ground in advance. He endured it without any ripples, but his hair was a little messy. The storm only lasted for less than 10 seconds before it ended. Gu Zhongming pulled his face, which was covered in patches of gray, up from the ground. Looking at the scene in front of him that could not be any cleaner, he could not help but sigh. The dust is all gone. Yin Nuashing's figure flashed and came to the side of the man in blue. She removed his energy barrier and grabbed his collar while he was still dizzy. "Look at you. Are you having fun now? You have no enmity with each other, yet you ended up like this. In this void of order, what are you pursuing?" Yin Nuashing slapped him. Seeing that he was seeing stars, she grabbed him and swung him a few times. "You're dizzy? You're dizzy just like that? Don't be in such a hurry to faint. Let me tell you the reason. Let me think. I'll start from when the Yuan realm was created." Halfway through his nagging, the blue-clothed man suddenly woke up. He didn't know if it was because of the nagging or because of the tearing pain that came from all over his body. He stared at Yin Nuashing, who was talking nonstop. "You're looking for death. I'm Dong." Yin Nuashing punched him on the head. The man in blue immediately saw stars again and almost fainted. Then he coughed dryly. "Cough, cough, let's continue. The world of order is very fair. Everyone. Therefore, we have to fight for it, exploring the void, the meaning of order, the meaning of our lives. We can't fight casually. Internal friction, meaningless loss will only cause chaos in the camp." The man in blue was awakened once again by the nagging. He roared at Yin Nuashing, "You lunatic! Just kill me!" "Shut up! Listen!" Yin Nuashing slapped him so hard that his face was flattened. It's very impolite to interrupt others. If you don't listen to me properly, I can only strangle you to death and quietly release your soul from purgatory. Jing Yuanji and the others who were watching from behind were dumbfounded. Even if he was not beaten to death, he would be nagged to death, right? Speaking of which, when did this guy learn to pollute the mind? If you don't listen to me, I'll beat you to death. If you don't listen to me, you can only be a dead person who will be nagged by future generations. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.